Call the meeting of the Board of Selectmen for July 11th, 2016 to order. It's 6:36. As required by open meeting law, we are informing you that we will be video and audio taping this meeting. And in addition, anyone in the audience who is going to record this meeting has to notify the chair now. Hearing no one, could you please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Any weekly briefings? Public comment and announcement. Tonight we have a presentation of a donation. Oh, Jeremy. Weekly briefing. Sorry, Jeremy.
That's okay. Two things. One, I just wanted to let you guys, to kind of remind everybody that this week going on is the Housing with Love Walk. Back to my... He's hiding. Where are you going? We've got two Harwich residents who are walking the entire distance all across the Cape. We'll be in Harwich on Wednesday morning, Richard and Bernadette Waystack. So if you get a chance to cheer them on, I think usually there's a group from Hatch also who's walking that, but that's Wednesday. That's the Housing with Love Walk. Tomorrow, they started today. That's why Richard was here and I think left. Yeah, he did. His feet are a little sore. And secondly, just wanted, well, actually two more things. One, I wanted to thank Peter Hughes and Chris Clark for last week dunking in the dunk tank. We had warmer water this year, but at our first Port Summer Nights, July 6th, we had a dunk tank for scholarship funds. We raised just over $200 that night, and I think they went down probably at least 200 times each, probably. So we had a good time. This week on Wednesday from 6 to 9 on Main Street is the second our Port Summer Nights musical stroll. The theme this week is Thank a Hero. We've got touch-a-trucks with the police and fire. We have Big Nick's Ride, the military appreciation. We've got lots of activities going on this Wednesday night. So if everybody gets a chance, come on down Harwich Port, Main Street. We've got lots of activities. We've got a big thank you card for everybody to sign, and it's just a great event. And support our local police, fire, military, and Coast Guard as well. So.
Thank you. When could we expect to see the Waystacks in Harwich, and where?
They'll be arriving Harwich Wednesday morning, I believe, probably around 10 o'clock, 10:30, something like that. Depending on how they do in the morning, that's their longest day. They end up usually around lunchtime at the church up in Harwich Center here for a lunch, for very brief, and then they actually end up Wednesday night by the McDonald's in Yarmouth. So they've got a long day ahead of them on Wednesday.
And what road do they walk? You know?
I'm not sure on the exact route.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, thank you.
Susan. Barbara Ann Fuller.
Just a quick announcement, July 19th, if you all want to live to be over 100 and be healthy, we have a cultural council, thanks to our Harwich Cultural Council grant, presentation on that day from 10 to 11:15 with a dietitian who's fabulous, Tricia Silverman, who's going to be presenting on the secrets of living a long life from the Okinawans. And obviously a great deal that has to do with diet. So please join us. It's a free event and it's at the community center.
Thank you. Ann Stewart.
Yeah, Ann Stewart, Pleasant Lake. Almost 3 weeks ago, I sent you a letter about my concerns about the West Harwich residents' possible exposure to toxic groundwater, but I didn't see it posted in tonight's packet, although West Harwich is on the agenda.
And it is on the agenda.
Okay, so if I could just do a quick few comments of that, since the packet, the letter wasn't included in the packet.
You'll be able to do it when it's on the agenda. It is on the agenda.
Okay,
So
then
we'll take it up at
great, thank you.
as an agenda. Norm Clark.
Mr. Chairman, very quickly speaking, I want to take a second to speak on behalf of my brothers and sisters in blue. It's times when you don't even want to turn on the TV. Very discouraging. Went into work this morning and I was overwhelmed with the amount of food, cards, food and cards and well-wishing to the Harwich police officers. And it rejuvenates you, and the world is a good place. And here in Harwich, we have some really good people that really raise the spirits of our great police department. So I want to thank the citizens for doing that.
Thank you for all your more on weekly briefing. Public comment and announcements. So we have a presentation of a donation from the Dennis Harwich Lions Club to the Harwich Fire Department.
Thank you. My name is Sandy Fife. I'm the current president of the Dennis Harwich Lions Club. And we're here tonight to celebrate our 100th anniversary of Lions coming up in next year. 100 years ago, we were challenged by Helen Keller to be Knights of the Blind, and Lions have worked over 100 years to try to eradicate preventable blindness. So this year, we've been asked to work with the communities and to celebrate the centennial by doing community gifts. I sent you a letter and told you all about the projects that we do all year long, trying to raise funds for scholarships, the food pantry, various places that we do support. We do try to support community departments also, and this year we'd like to recognize the fire department by giving them a community gift of $500 for equipment, and it's up to the chief where he feels that would be best put to use. So I do have the check with me tonight, and I have a small plaque. Thank you for all you do, too.
Thank you for all you do.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank the Lions Club for this. We are in desperate need of replacing some equipment, and we will put this $500 to good use, and we will certainly let the board know and the club know what it goes to, and it will be marked appropriately. Thank you.
Next up is the, go ahead.
We do have a big event coming up this weekend. I'll leave some information on the back table. It's an arts and craft fair at Wixon School in Dennis. This particular event helps fund the scholarships. So it's real important that it doesn't rain. So if you could just say a little prayer for us, because the weather is kind of iffy right now. But I'll leave some information on the back table.
Great. Thank you again. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda and A, approve the minutes from June 27th, 2016, the executive session. B, accept the donation of $500 from the Dennis Harwich Lions Club to the Harwich Fire Department. C, approve recommendation of the Selectmen's Interview Nomination Subcommittee to appoint new members to fill current committee vacancies. And that includes Joseph Powers to the Bylaw Charter Review Committee with an expiration term of June 30th, 2017, and Joseph Powers for the Historic District Committee, again with expiration June 30th, 2017, as an alternate member. D, confirm the appointment of Peter Stovich as new disposal area heavy equipment operator, tractor trailer driver for the town of Harwich. E, approve the highway director's request to Mass DOT to extend the acceleration lanes at the Harwich exits on Route 6 and authorize the chair to sign the letter.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Chris, could you just give us a brief explanation on E, because I came to our packets late?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. The state is coming in, Mass DOT, the Department of Transportation, is coming in and doing a reclamation project where they're basically redoing the pavement on that section of Route 6 from exit 10 to exit 11. In our review of the accident data, I think if I have this right, it was 740 pages of accidents for those two intersections. So as anyone that drives that on-ramp onto exit 10 onto Mid-Cape headed westerly will attest that it's a very short run. So we have requested, actually through the highway director, that if they could, while they have the equipment there, while they're doing the project, if they could extend that acceleration lane to give people more of an opportunity. I've had over the years, a traffic engineer had told me that anytime you have stop traffic and traffic going 50 miles an hour, that's a recipe for disaster. And we have 740 pages that basically prove that point. So this request is to ask the Department of Transportation to actually do a change order and consider doing an extension of that lane to allow for traffic to be able to accelerate and merge safely. So that's the origin behind that.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor? Aye. Next up is public hearings and presentations. The first one is a public hearing for an application for transfer of annual all alcoholic beverage package store license from Harwich East Liquors to Portside Liquors and pledge of said license.
Hello.
Good evening, I'm Michael Heineman, I represent the Metries. This is Zana Metry, the applicant.
Welcome.
As you know, we've applied. The Metries have been in business for 18 years. George and Zana.
Excuse me one
I'm
second.
sorry.
We just need a green card.
Yeah.
I'm trying to sell it.
And I'm going to read into the record the public hearing notice as well.
Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the general laws as amended that application has been made to this board for a transfer of the annual package store all alcoholic beverages license now held by John and John United Corporation doing business as Harwich East Liquors, 1421 Route 39, East Harwich. John F. Kenny, manager to Portside Liquors, Third Inc., doing business as Portside Liquors, 1421 Route 39, East Harwich, to Zena B. Metry, manager and pledge of said license on the following described premises. The premise is approximately 5,750 square feet of retail space. It's an open space area with a walk-in cooler. It's 1 floor, 2 exits, and 3 bathrooms. The Board of Selectmen will hold a hearing upon the application on Monday, July 11, 2016, no earlier than 6:30 in the Donna B. Griffin Memorial Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, which at time all interested parties will be heard.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, do we have all the green cards?
Yes.
Thank you.
George and Zana Metry have been in the liquor store business for 18 years. They have a store in Pocasset, they have a store in Pembroke. This will be their third. They've never once had any of their licenses suspended or revoked. They run a good, clean business. They've been active in each community in which they have a store, and they look forward to being active in this community here. George and Zana have been present here in Harwich over the last month or two, pretty regularly, getting to know the customers and working with Mr. Kenny, getting to know the operations of the store. Mr. Kenny, who's here, the prior owner, is going to be staying on as a manager. We don't expect to change anything with regard to the operations of the store, but there have been some upgrades done, some new coolers, a new humidor has been put in pursuant to the purchase, and the Metrys expect to continue to grow the business and run a good business that benefits the town of Harwich. So we ask you to approve the transfer.
Thank you. Any comments from the board on this? Peter?
Just if I read the documentation correctly, you're asking that the license be pledged to support some financing, is that true?
Yes, yeah, there's financing and the license will be pledged subject to all the town bylaws.
Okay, so you understand the phrases we need to have put in there so that we're not giving up any of our, authority to revoke your license or something like that.
Rockland Trust has been made aware of all of that and has been proper.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Can I get a motion on this?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the transfer of the application of all alcoholic beverages package store license from Harwich East Liquors to Portside Liquors and pledge of said license.
Second. been moved and seconded to approve the all alcohol, the transfer of the,
Mr. Chairman, I just, one thing for clarification on the manager, you said that the previous gentleman would be holding on, but yet in the
Yeah,
material,
absolutely.
it's actually, so what is the length of time? 'Cause I think that's important for the board to know that the application has Ms. Metri as the manager, so.
I misspoke as far as she will be the manager on site regularly. Mr. Kenny's been saying he's going to stay on and assist. How long is that going to continue?
For as long as you can.
But you'll be
For
the manager of record, I think, and just
Yes,
for the public's benefit to know that.
Yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sorry for that, I wanted to make sure that that was.
John will be staying for very long.
thank you, Chris. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the transfer of the annual all alcohol beverages package store license from Harwich East Liquors to Portside Liquors and pledge of said license. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up under public hearings and presentations is an overview of Pleasant Bay Alliance activities. Coordinator Carol Ridley is here to do that presentation.
Good evening, thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate the invitation of the chair to come and address you this evening. And what I thought I would do, first I want to introduce myself, Carol Ridley, coordinator for the Pleasant Bay Alliance, and also note that Alan Thompson and Dolly Howell, who are your appointed steering committee representatives, are also here this evening. So I invite them to chime in at any point. And I thought what I would do is provide you with a very brief update on the Alliance's activities and give you a little bit of background on our organization and some of the things we've accomplished and also what we have underway. And be happy to answer any questions you may have, either during or after my presentation. So just a little bit of history here, because I think it's significant, recognizing that in concert with the towns of Chatham and Brewster and Orleans, with which Harwich shares Pleasant Bay and the Pleasant Bay watershed, steps were taken over 20 years ago to work collaboratively and regionally to manage this shared resource so it would be pristine and healthy for our generation and future generations. And that process began in the late 1980s with an application that was supported by each of the 4 towns for a state designation as an area of critical environmental concern. That designation, which was a nomination from the 4 towns working together, was acted on by the state, and so the designation was made. And then it took some time, almost 10 years frankly, for the towns to work together to pull together the first resource management plan. And I have with me this evening, and I'll leave with you each a copy of our most recent update of the resource management plan. That document in its initial form was adopted by 3 of the 4 towns in 1998, Harwich, Chatham, and Orleans. And at that time also, an intermunicipal agreement which formed the Pleasant Bay Alliance was established. So the vote that town meetings took, and that was a town meeting action, was to adopt the plan and then also authorize each Board of Selectmen to enter into an intermunicipal agreement to form the Pleasant Bay Alliance to help implement that. And one of the underpinnings, and you have, I think, a copy of the most recent version of that IMA in your packet, one of the underpinnings of this is that the Alliance was never intended to be another layer of bureaucracy or another layer of anything really, but more a forum for collaboration. And I think as we go through the presentation, I think you're going to see that we've been rather successful at that over the last several years, almost 20 years now. In 2007, Brewster joined the Alliance and adopted the plan. And as part of our plan and the agreement that you revisit on a 5-year basis, we are required to update the plan and bring that back to each town board of selectmen and each town meeting on a 5-year basis. And at that time, we are able to update issues, new issues, provide new data, update the studies that we've done, And also it gives each board of selectmen, each community, each town meeting an opportunity to take a fresh look and look at the progress we've achieved and renew its commitment to the alliance. And I was able to go back and check. So in effect, there have been 4 town meeting votes in Harwich and each of the member towns to adopt the plan and reestablish the alliance. And unanimously in the last 2 town meetings here in Harwich, I think all 4 of them actually, but I didn't have a chance to check that in all of the town reports. So a tremendous amount of public input and opportunity for revisiting happens through this process. It's also sent to the State Executive Office of Environmental Affairs for approval on a 5-year basis. So tremendous amount of thought and preparation and community input goes into the document. It's approved by each of the 4 towns in the state, and this is really our guidebook for action on a 5-year basis. All of the work we do is available pretty much on our website, or if it's not, you can contact us for further information, and that's www.pleasantbay.org. In terms of our governance, the IMA sets forth 2 main committees. Our steering committee, which is our decision-making, policy-making group. Alan Thompson and Jolly Howell are your appointees. Each board of selectmen appoints members to that committee. In the past, Larry Valentine was a member of our steering committee for many, many years. That's the group that really makes the decisions, if you will, on behalf of the Alliance in terms of any studies or information or recommendations that we want to forward to our member towns for action. You also appoint members to his technical resource committee. So presently, Amy Usowski, Heinz Proft, and John Rendon are your appointees to our technical resource committee. In the past, Tom Leach, Shoreline, I think in years past, John Chatham, Tom Leach, I mentioned others who have held those posts over the years. Frank Sampson, I know, was a member of our Watershed Work Group for many, many years in our technical resource committee. Those are the folks who provide input on a technical level to inform the decisions of the steering committee. Again, all driven and guided by our resource management plan, which is approved by the town. We also have a number of issue-oriented work groups on watershed planning, coastal processes, water quality, wetlands protection, and that really allows us an opportunity to bring in other experts, and we're really blessed on the Cape to have so many organizations with a tremendous amount of expertise who help us out, and a couple of the organizations are listed here. The St. Sea Grant, the Cooperative Extension, the Commission, Cape Cod Commission, Mass DEP, the Center for Coastal Studies. So a lot of great technical expertise that participates in our deliberations as well. So just a quick overview of the plan. Our goals are broad and far-reaching in terms of not only sustaining the health of the environmental system, the ecological system, but also the public's enjoyment of that system. It was never meant that Pleasant Bay would be a sort of a sanctuary off limits. This is a place where people earn their living, they live there, they enjoy it, they go shellfishing, they go fishing or boating or sailing, and that is a part of the culture and part of what we want to preserve through the work that we do. So just a quick review of our guiding points there. The plan itself has several chapters that address these topics: protecting biodiversity, coastal processes and wetlands protection, so important to storm damage and protection and coastal resiliency, watershed planning, which addresses all of the nutrient management issues we talk about frequently, navigation safety, fisheries management, and public access. So it's a pretty comprehensive document. Just to give you an idea of the breadth of area we're talking about, this is one of the larger estuarine systems on the East Coast. The ACEC, or Area of Critical Environmental Concern, is 1,000 acres, reaching up to Meeting House Pond in Orleans and all the way down to the just off of the Strong Island, it was called Minister's Point in Chatham. Now, our study area, however, is the entire 21,000 acre watershed. The theory being is that it's all well and good to focus on the bay, but what really affects the health of the bay is everything we do with the watershed. So watershed planning is a big part of our plan and has been part of our study area from the beginning, from our initial plan. I thought I would just walk through a couple of projects and talk with you about some of the studies we have underway, just to give you an idea of the breadth of some of the things that we are able to accomplish as a four-town collaboration. So one, I think that's near and dear to everyone here in Harwich is the Muddy Creek restoration. Back in, I'd say, the early part of 2003, 2006, we started the process of looking at the water quality problems in Muddy Creek. And I'm not going to go through each of these studies, but just to give you an idea, over a period of about a decade, the Alliance acquired about $110,000 in non-municipal funds from grants and state sources to undertake a series of studies that led to the recommendation to Harwich and Chatham to build the bridge. So we did, sizing it, modeling the water quality improvements, assessing all the ecological restoration benefits. It sort of presented the option to the towns, and also all of that work, which defined the problem and documented the benefits, really set the towns up for grant writing, because all of that information was compiled, scientifically verified. That really made the process of generating the grant applications much easier. So certainly one of the projects that we feel has been very, very successful for the four towns, but in particular for Harwich and Chatham. Coastal processes is another key area of our operations. This is a great overview of the inlet system, which from a hydrological standpoint, really everything to do with the health of the system has to do with flushing. So to the extent that changes occur in the barrier beach and inlet configuration, that has a significant impact on ecological restoration conditions throughout the system. So we monitor that very carefully. We work closely with the Center for Coastal Studies, which conducted an inlet migration study for us that basically projected 50 years out what's that inlet configuration going to look like, so that we can, as resource managers, look ahead and understand what the conditions are going to be like that we're going to be dealing with. That has a lot to do with managing nitrogen and the flushing of nitrogen in and out of the system. We have an annual tide gauge monitoring program with the Fish Pier and Meeting House Pond as the two locations where we monitor tide levels. And a study that we have underway that we're pretty excited about has to do with studying the effects of sea level rise on the barrier beach and also on the inner shoreline. So we want to understand first what are the likely levels of sea level rise that we're going to see, and then what are we going to expect those sea level rise changes to mean in terms of changes to the barrier beach and inlet configuration and also the inner shoreline, where we have wetlands, we have public access points that we need to be able to plan for if we feel there are going to be significant changes to those areas. I realized that a couple of weeks ago, I believe there were some questions about the Alliance's involvement with the newly formed Cape Cod Collaborative for Climate Change. And our interest in that organization is directly related to the parts of the resource management plan that charge us with looking at these issues of sea level rise and climate change. So in terms of wetlands, in terms of public access points, in terms of changes to the barrier beach, which are going to affect flushing and our ability to manage the nitrogen situation. So our interest in participating in that collaborative event that was held at the Watershed, it was a tremendous opportunity for us to join with other organizations doing other kinds of research to share that information and make people aware of what's going on in this issue with respect to Pleasant Bay, which is our view, so. Along that vein, we are also working with the Conservation Agency. Amy's very involved with this effort to look at ways to develop guidelines for permitting erosion control structures. So this is a very hot topic and something that we're almost completed with our guidelines that we want to send out to peer review to engineers and other people who work in the area of permitting here on the Cape to get their feedback and really come up with a set of permitting guidelines that will be a resource for our conservation commissions to draw upon when they're given applications to deal with coastal erosion. Another project that was pretty significant very recently was our efforts to, over a couple of years, to address a moratorium on dredging in Pleasant Bay that was a result of the state ACEC designation. Without getting into too much of the weeds here, an ACEC designation prohibits improvement dredging. So any dredging that had not previously been permitted before the ACEC designation in 1987 would have been prohibited. Only areas that had been previously dredged. And of course, in a system like this, all of those blue lines, which is the major navigation channel from Meeting House Pond to for anyone who wants to get out into Chatham Harbor or beyond. None of those blue areas had ever been dredged before. So with the 2007 inlet formation, there was a tremendous amount of material moving around Minister's Point in that area, laser pointer, but where the 2007 inlet was formed, the North Inlet. And we were concerned that if we weren't able to dredge, if necessary, that historic navigation access would be prohibited. So we had to work with DEP to change 3 state regulations, Chapter 91 Wetlands and Water Quality Certificate, to allow, we also had to amend our resource management plan to allow the town of Chatham to seek permits if in emergency cases they needed to preserve historic access. And I remember visiting with the Harwich Waterways Committee and getting their support for that. So another effort where, it seemed to be happening in one town, but really benefiting all 4 towns because there's only one way to get out, and that's through Chatham. So that was a significant recent effort. We do a lot of work on water quality monitoring and modeling. We just last week launched our 17th monitoring season. We have about 100 volunteers who go out to about 30 stations up and down the system. We coordinate with Hines and his counterparts in the other towns. We've collected over 3,000 samples. We have a tremendous amount of data that's been used as part of the wastewater management process. We focus on nutrients and have done some statistical trend analysis. And one of the things that we're working on right now with SMAS, the School for Marine Science and Technology at UMass Dartmouth, is taking our statistical trend analysis and looking for trends in ecological health that can tell us, what are we seeing? Are we seeing improvement? Are we seeing degradation? So we can really track improvement or lack thereof over time. So this is really one of our foundational programs, and I think something that's been tremendously valuable to each of our member towns, because the breadth of data is just, it's remarkable. And I have to shout out to our volunteers who go out 6 mornings, July, August, September, to collect this information. It's a tremendous stewardship building opportunity, but we couldn't do it without our volunteers. I mentioned the Estuaries Project. One of our efforts has been to coordinate the 4 towns looking at nutrient management. I was before you a few weeks ago on this topic. We recognize that septic systems account for 3/4 of our septic problem in Pleasant Bay. We have 19 total maximum daily load thresholds established for Pleasant Bay. So one of our efforts is working with Wright Pierce to pull the different pieces of the town plans together, working with the technical consultants, Dave Young and his counterparts, to look at that overview of what that means for Pleasant Bay. Another project that we completed was a fertilizer management study. How can we reduce the amount of fertilizer, that source of nitrogen, into our system? And we a couple of times included a best practices card for lawn care in the Harwich water bills, for example. It's a way to get information out to residents about things they can do to begin immediately to address the nitrogen problem in our watershed. Just quickly, we monitor fisheries in Pleasant Bay. This is just a couple of the figures that you'll see in the management plan. We track shellfish harvests. We've been doing this since 1975 in terms of what's going on with shellfishing for a variety of 6 different species. We also collaborate with other organizations on a series of projects that are trying to update our understanding of the status of fisheries in Pleasant Bay in terms of benthic mapping of the seafloor and habitat, doing some seining and counting of different species of fish and shellfish, and looking at the issue of seals as well, as they may affect fisheries in the system. So that was a really quick walkthrough, and I apologize if I glossed over a few things, but I'd be happy to go back or answer any questions. I guess the point I'd like to leave you with is that I think the Alliance was a far-seeing step the towns took years ago to work collaboratively. I think we do that very successfully. I think it's a good investment for the towns in terms of the quality and quantity of information that no single town would be able to generate on its own. So we look forward to continuing our work, and again, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about any of our projects.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you for coming and doing the
My pleasure.
questions from the board. Peter?
Well, I just point out that,
for all these things that you're talking about doing, all the work the Alliance does, Harwich pays 18% of the total, and quite frankly, it's only $17,000. So I think, you folks, as far as I'm concerned, are the forerunners, if you will, to all the water quality activities now going on everywhere. Many, many years ago, you folks started all that, and, we've all been the beneficiary of it, frankly. If you go back, though, to the original picture of Muddy Creek, just because it kind of strikes me. Yeah, right, I think back at the beginning of your presentation, you had a shot of Muddy Creek. Are we seeing a rise in the level or any change in the level of the water since the bridge has been put in?
Well, thank you for asking that. So the modeling is a 2-foot change in tide range, which is basically a foot on the high tide and a foot on the low tide. So higher high, lower low. We recently, and actually this is the towns, not the Alliance, but the towns contracted with Applied Coastal Research and Engineering. They've installed tide gauges in Muddy Creek and outside of Muddy Creek. So they're actually measuring. So we modeled what we thought would happen. Now we're measuring. But there is a change. And I was actually, I paddled up last 4th of July, I think, and you can see changes just visually, a change in the water quality, certainly in the lower portion, not as much in the upper portion, but that's going to change too over time. And we have 2 monitoring stations in Muddy Creek, one lower, one upper. So we're monitoring for nitrogen and bacteria. So we'll get those monitoring readings. We're also going to be doing some vegetation monitoring so that one thing people may see is a change in vegetation. As the salinity increases, a lot of those plants that weren't salt tolerant are going to die, or trees. So you might see some die-off as that transition happens over time. But yes, those changes are happening because the other piece too is we're monitoring what's happening on the channel meander outside of the creek with those higher velocity currents. So we can see if there are any measurable changes there. So a lot of things we don't know exactly yet, but we will have answers very soon on those points.
Do you think that's 6 months away that we have some solid data, some indication, or is it a year away? Or
by the end of this calendar year, we'll have several readings on the tide. We'll have a whole lunar cycle on the tides. So yes, and we will have 6 different readings on the channel migration, and we'll have our water quality data. So very soon. Yeah.
Thank you.
Angela?
I think the Pleasant Bay Alliance has done a tremendous job in the Pleasant Bay area over many, many different projects. And I think that's the reason I was so surprised about 3 weeks ago when I read in the paper an article about the organization or the joining of an organization by the Cape Cod Alliance that was going to deal in quantifiable measurements to mitigate climate change. And their goal is to develop a set of Cape-wide benchmarks for reducing dependency on fossil fuel. And I can go through a whole list of I'm just reading from the newspaper article, of what they're planning on doing. And it's very different than what the Cape Cod, the Pleasant Bay Alliance is. And I'm surprised that the Pleasant Bay Alliance joined this group and is participating in a Cape-wide activity, whereas it was founded by the 4 towns in a specific area to work on a specific area. And I had never heard about any reasons for the change, and I find out that neither had the other towns. So I'm just curious of why this happened in the first place.
Sure, no, I'm happy to address that. So our interest in the organization really stems from the recommendations in the approved management plan that deal with sea level rise and climate change. So we are doing work which is called for in our management plan on this topic. And we were approached by the organizers of the effort, which by the way was organized to occur on World Oceans Day. So that the whole focus initially of this program was how do we bring our understanding of what's happening with climate change more locally to our understanding of how it's affecting our local waters. And so that seemed entirely relevant and directly related to the work we're doing on sea level rise and climate change for our management plan. So again, we thought this was an opportunity to join with groups like the Commission, APCC, the Chamber, and other groups that Cape Light Compact that are doing different things on climate change, but we could share information on the piece that we're involved with. So it wasn't intended to do anything other than just share that information, and we see our part of our charge too as public engagement on these topics. So if we see a creative way to do that, we want to take advantage of that opportunity. So we saw it as entirely consistent with our charge to be part of that organization and part of that event.
I'm sorry, I can't see that because of, I don't want to go through this list and waste everybody's time, but it is very much Cape-wide. The town of Harwich has other areas like West Harwich and the Herring River and other land areas. If we wanted to join this, don't you think we should either talk to your group or form a different group to meet with them? Because there are other parts of the town rather than Pleasant Bay. So and that confuses me. And I know it's not a ton of money that is put into the Alliance, but it is money, and it's supposed to be spent in doing certain kinds of projects. That's my only concern. And their friends of Pleasant Bay are members also, and obviously they would have information. So I was just surprised more than anything else.
Well, I want to be very clear too that no funds were spent on this event by the Alliance. We simply went to the event and participated and shared information. So no commitments, no funds were spent on this.
That obviously wasn't mentioned in this article, that no funds are spent or will be spent, I guess. And we had no way of knowing that. I think if things like this come up, it might be helpful just to let us know what you're planning on doing. Because I do know that people from other towns have the same question.
Mr. Chairman, I want to say the steering committee voted to join with this group. We interact with a lot of groups, such as Pleasant Bay Coalition, and different ones that do this similar things that we do. We find it an opportunity to see other sides of things and learn things. So when we participate with somebody as far as climate change goes, that's a major player within the Pleasant Bay area. It's climate change. Things are happening. It's a dynamic area. And we don't contribute any money to these things, but we do participate with all these different organizations. We're friends of Pleasant Bay. And on the groups go. And it's been very rewarding for us as to additional information and issues that have come up, and it gives us the opportunity to learn more about it. In all the years, 94, 95 is when we kicked off this, and I had the opportunity to serve with a gentleman, Alan Cohen, who was the fellow that had the foresight to go for the ACEC. I mean, he lived on the bay, but could see changes back then that moved him to do this kind of thing. So, for me, I see changes, in my years growing up here. And it's just, a few times I thought about, wow, it's time to move on. But you know what? It's been a very educational 20-plus years for me, and I've had the opportunity to learn an awful lot. And I have to tell you, climate change plays a big part in our lives. So just we have no problem with the organization.
You know something? I like to read these 5 things because I don't like people dance around things. Number 1, develop a set of Cape-wide benchmarks for reducing dependency on fossil fuel. 2, assist local organizations in identifying and developing achievable objectives in reducing their carbon footprints. Monitor progress towards reaching these objectives. Educate youth about the causes of climate change and generate youth participation in climate change reduction activities. And number 5, publicize progress made towards individual and Cape-wide benchmarks. That's not basically what you do at all. Okay, and that's the goals of the collaborative that's set up. And then the kinds of groups that are in here are, let's see if I have them, but they include okay, they include the Preserve Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, Cape Cod Fishermen's Association, Cape Cod Commission, Cape Cod National Seashore, Cape Light Compact. They're very, very different kinds of operations, and which are generally broadly responsible for large areas of the Cape, not Pleasant Bay. And I don't think that it mentions anything that you really covered. So that's why it just surprised me. I don't want this to go on and on and on. But I think it's important that we stick to what we're supposed to be doing. That's all. There are a lot of things that are going on in Pleasant Bay that I think need to be covered. And I think, I'm just surprised, that's all. And that was my only comment. But I was just surprised about this, and I was hoping there was a valid reason for this. You know?
May I respond to that?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a valid reason. The reason we participated in that organization in that event is because it was related to our management plan. You authorized the Alliance to undertake activities to implement the approved management plan. It was the judgment of the steering committee that participating in this event, in this organization, was consistent with that charge. So I think it's important to, as I've stated before, there have been no commitment of funds. We haven't committed any activities. We participated in an event of information sharing. That was essentially our involvement.
Well, that's not correct unless the paper is wrong again. Because if you didn't participate in an event, you became one of the members of the group forming the collaborative. You became part of the collaborative.
Of an information sharing collaborative.
Okay? That's different than what you just said.
Thank you. Janelle?
Angelo, newspapers aren't always right, first of all. But I don't think that I don't think there's any issue with information sharing with some sort of event. I mean, you didn't read the whole thing, so I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about, but it sounds like it was an event of sharing information by many different groups. It wasn't like a new nonprofit was created, correct?
It was a new group that was created, a new collaboration, and with our...
But they're not part of that.
Yes.
If I may.
Yes, they are.
If I may. So each organization is able to bring to this collaboration their expertise, the information that they generate or have relative to the topic of climate change. Ours is pretty specific, and I shared an outline of that with you today. We're looking at the effects of sea level rise, how that affects coastal systems, and specifically Pleasant Bay. We will share that information with whomever finds it helpful. And in this instance, it seems to be consistent with some of the work that the Seashore is doing and other groups are doing. I think there are a lot of groups on that list that are very consistent with our charge. So I think the whole concept here is that this is a very large topic. It's a very complex topic. But if we all bring our piece of information together and share that information in an open way, it's an obvious service to the community to inform and possibly generate ideas or opportunities to address things before they become issues. So that is the spirit that we approached this with, and as I mentioned, that's all we offered or brought or committed to the endeavor.
Well, I thank you, because what you just did is explain to me what you're doing, which is fine with me. It's fine to share whatever you want, but that's not what they're saying. So I will understand that you're sharing with whomever you need to be and learning from them. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But that's not what this says, nor what you said before.
Thank you. Going forward, I think we can can look at our representatives that are on the steering committee and ask them for a little information sharing as you join these groups. I think Alan and Dolly can bring back information to the board and keep us apprised of what's going on and answer any questions. Julie?
I just had a question in terms of how much over the last 5 years, if you know, has the sea level risen in Pleasant Bay?
Well, we haven't actually measured that, so we're basically working from, well, the first step of our study is to look at, because there are a lot of ranges of estimates of what's going on, and which of those estimates are actually pertinent to this part of, this part of the system. So I don't have a measurement for you, but part of what we're looking at is what we anticipate will happen in the future. So it's more of a future looking as opposed to what might have happened in the last few years. We'll have an estimate, basically a range of estimates, one that's probably more likely than others, and then from there model the potential changes from that estimate. So I would be happy, and we expect to have this report completed in the September timeframe. I'd be happy to come back and provide you with a briefing on that. And share those findings with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And so overall, your as you well described, your collaboration is to collect information. It's no cost to the taxpayers, and it's advised by the steering committee. Just
correct. That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
All of the projects that you're working on, all the information that you're gathering, do you update the website regularly, or where would the public find these
Sure.
reports?
No, thank you. Yes, all of our reports are posted. And if there's one that you don't think you see, contact me. I'm happy to, but I'm pretty sure that all of our recent reports are on the website. I update it frequently.
Thank you very much for coming.
Great.
Thank you for the overview of Pleasant Bay Alliance. We appreciate it.
Great. And I'll leave these
Great
copies
work.
with you. Thank you very much for your time this
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I was just looking at our website, Mr. Chair, and we need to update it as far as the members of the steering committee and the, I don't know, the technical resource committee, but it does not have Mr. Thompson listed at all. And it has Judith Underwood twice, so we just need to update that, please.
Great. Caleb's making notes.
You're not on it anymore.
We're gonna move on. Okay, next up is old business. And the first issue is the Fitzpatrick Settlement Agreement compliance. I just want to point out to everybody, this is a public meeting, not a public hearing. It is at the chair's discretion on who talks and how long they talk for. I would ask that you all, this is a hot topic, obviously. I would ask that you bring new information when you speak, that we don't need to repeat everything that we heard last time. We all have read through all of the emails that have been sent to the conservation. We have read through the legal work that's been done on this. So I would request new information if you speak, and try and keep it brief. And if the person says before you what you want to say, it has been heard. I would ask that you will be acknowledged and you will go to the microphone. Don't speak from the back of the room or the side of the room. Stand at the microphone, identify yourself, and keep it respectful, please. With that, Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the overview as well. In terms of, I think a meeting in May, I was tasked with putting together kind of a overview of the work that has been done to date. I have gone out to the site. I've looked at the site myself. I've been out with some staff. I have not specifically met with any of the residents on either side. I wanted to kind of look at this from a clean perspective, if you would, or from a legal perspective. The three areas that I focused my attention on in this review was that there was a conservation order that had been administered and consistent with item 6 of the agreement between the town and the Fitzpatricks in regards to erosion control. So in the package of materials, I do have a response from our conservation administrator on that topic. Secondly, I also met with the town surveyor to kind of go through and understand the maps and what is actually transpired out there from a survey perspective or a boundary line perspective. And then thirdly, I also looked into or met with folks from Coleman and Page, the town's law firm, to go through and get a sense for how things have transpired and legally where is the town in terms of it. And one thing, I did not go to law school. I do have a master's in public administration, so I'm going to kind of simplify this and make this so it's one, from my perspective, what I've been able to gather. So in terms of, if I misspeak, again, I didn't go to law school. One of the things I think is important to remember is that this development was done back in the 1920s. So when this was done in the 20s, there was apparently an attempt, what the intent of the developer was to mark out lots and to create what's called kind of hard property lines. And there's a reason why I'll say that. I have the illustration up, and a hard property line is exactly that. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that's actually the Fitzpatrick property. That yellow line, that straight at the bottom is the hard property line. There is it's my understanding, a term in law that, well, let me go back. In the 1920s, what the intent of the developer was to mark out and have these house lots. The developer also was very intentional, I think it was 1924, that when the development was done, that there would be an access and that the frontage, the land that actually borders the water would be public property. So the intent was to have a development and then give access to the members of that development into the public way and public area and have create a public beach. I think I've heard that Public Beach 22 reference a couple times from the last time. So I do appreciate, I'm trying to think of Mr. Ely, I think was one that sent the material to me in terms of pointing out that there are public beaches up there. So it appears that what the intent was in the 20s was to have a development in which there would be an access point and then the opportunity for folks that live in that area to go to a public beach. So that lays a little bit of the foundation. The next step in the process is 1970, I think in the early 70s, there was a request to come to town for an easement. And the easement was to have access by the town over privately owned property. And the attorney gets into some details about what does that mean when you have a roadway. The attorney informs me that when you have a roadway and it says, use the word by, that by references that the ownership goes to each of the parcels on either side and goes to the center line of that roadway. So the property is private property. What the town took in 1970, in the 70s, was just an easement, which basically means that the property owner cannot create an obstruction to prevent people from using that easement from going from Shore Road down to the beach. So the town does not own that property. And I think that's an important differential, because generally people say, oh, when you hear the word eminent domain, and certainly in my experience, when I hear the word eminent domain, that is the town going in and actually acquiring property. We did not acquire property. We acquired the ability to cross private property from the purposes of getting from Shore Road to the public beach. The other issue that gets created in this scenario, well, let me finish the history. So that was in the 70s. There was obviously litigation in the 2009, 2010 that got resolved with the settlement agreement between the Board of Selectmen and the Fitzpatricks. Again, the property is Fitzpatrick property and then the neighbor's property. So there was obviously a dispute, and the dispute was resolved through a settlement agreement. One of the things that also to keep in mind is the town property, when it was acquired in 1924, was acquired with the concept of high tide and a low tide setup. And what does that mean? We had another case, actually, when I started here. I never heard the word accretion until I came down to the Cape. And And what the word accretion is that generally beaches can also gain sand, or in a period of erosion, they can lose sand. And what's transpired here, and now this is my term, I don't think it's a legal term of art, but there's been sufficient erosion in this area in which the public beach, and you can see on this diagram, there's two lines. The red line at the bottom is the low tide mark. The blue line that cuts across part of Mr. Fitzpatrick's property is the high water mark. So what does that mean? Under Massachusetts law, under case law, that the state recognizes what the coastal influences of nature are going to do. So in terms of the town property was from the Fitzpatrick's hard line to where the low water mark is. So yes, the town does own that public beach. So that's the good news. The bad news is during low tide and probably medium tide, it's accessible. During high tide, it's not. And at high tide, if a resident were to go down or someone were to go down and walk on Mr. Fitzpatrick's property, that's private property. So the fact that the tidal influences and the erosion and the accretion have changed the town ownership from what it was originally in 1924 to where it is now is obviously an impact in terms of how this operates, this area operates. So I just wanted to kind of go through that a little bit just to make sure that people understood that eminent domain, we don't own the property, we just have the ability to cross the property. Now certainly the town could change what that is a 40-foot right-of-way. I would encourage, and I have put this in writing, I would encourage the board to stick to what was agreed to in 2013 in terms of that access. It guarantees the access for the residents to be able to use that beach. It does also, in the public beaches that exist there, at low water times and at mid-tide, those beaches are accessible. So at high water, they're really the only thing that's accessible is some portions of, I can remember, lot 37, I think over by the jetty, there are some sections that are still accessible. So the impact of this is that we have a situation in which nature has changed the boundary line. I do want to also just comment, because I did bring up having the conservation administrator look at this, that there was, item 6 was to provide for an opportunity in the settlement agreement between the Selectmen and Fitzpatrick's, was to provide for a transition to allow for sand to accumulate and attempt to slow down the erosion within that right-of-way. So the material that was put up there was designed to try to stabilize the slope and to prevent that from continuing to erode away. So one question that does kind of emerge in my I guess, thinking is that someone went and obviously, unfortunately, vandalized that fencing area. Perhaps they didn't fully realize that was designed to help to stabilize the dune. But that is something that I think that under the agreement, it does call for the selectmen to have town forces go in and do that. Obviously, there is a conservation order that allows for some of that work to be done, and I think it's important that work be done. So I guess in summary, Mr. Chairman, I think that it makes sense to not weigh in on an issue that is obviously very, very controversial with the amount of time and energy that went into 2011 to 2013 on that ultimate settlement agreement, that it would be my recommendation as the administrator in the community to make sure that we continue to abide by that agreement. The attorney did caution that if there was going to be a reconfiguration, if there was going to be a widening of the path or any work, the town would have to apply, very similar to what we did at Bayview Path, we would have to apply to conservation to do any improvements within that coastal dune or in that wetlands type area. So I think that provides hopefully a fairly good overview of where we are in the situation. And certainly it's the board's agreement that I'm commenting on, so whatever the board seeks to do is certainly the board's prerogative.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for all your work on this. I'm going to start with comments from the board. Angela? Julie?
I just was, Chris, if you could clarify in the letter from the attorney, there is one portion where he talks about what the town can and cannot do in terms of making it, if it were to seek a roadway. It's, let me see if I can, it's under the determination of the towns and the abutters' rights to use the road.
Which opinion are we referring to?
This is the...
The July 8th one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it says, I think it's the third paragraph, where it says if the town determined that a wider footpath or a way suitable for vehicular use shall be installed, the town could undertake that project at a location within the road of the town's choosing, subject of course to other legal constraints and necessary approvals such as the requirements of the Wetlands Protection Act.
Correct.
And then as a result, there may be uses by the abutters that do not currently interfere with the town uses, but that might become inconsistent with the town's future uses. If this occurs, it is my opinion that the town could require that the abutters cease to use the road for purposes that are no longer compatible with the town's exercise of its easement rights.
Right. I think he's accomplishing a couple things there. One, if the property owner wanted to go and instead of having just a path, if he wanted to put a barrier up to prevent that path from people going from Beach Road down to the water, the town would be able to exercise its easement rights to be able to pass over that property. Because there's an existing path, there's no obstruction now to go from Beach Road to the property. There is some vegetation there that if we didn't have the path and if that vegetation overgrew, then potentially you wouldn't be able to access that. The agreement does say that DPW forces would go in and maintain that path to make sure that there's access. The one thing, and I am not in any way, shape, or form suggesting or recommending this, there are places in Harwich and other places on the Cape in which the town owns the property, owns the right-of-way. And what they've done is they actually create parking areas on town-owned property where you can come in at the end of a road and you can actually pull cars in and park and then use the beach. I don't think here he's saying that if we wanted to pursue something of that nature, then additional work would have to be done. Just as I think as an example, because we only have the right to pass, we don't have the right to reconstruct someone else's property. So we would have to go back to town meeting for eminent domain purposes, for the purposes of acquiring that property, to then be able to build a parking lot on that.
Which we wouldn't do because of the high water mark.
Well, we're above the high water mark. I think that's a public policy question. All what's been determined right now is to have access, and that access has been there since, well, at least in 72. If the town, and I think this is the point, if the town wanted to change that use, there would be different things.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah?
Peter?
Chairman Boone is here? Yeah. John, I'll put you on the spot a little bit, and it occurs to me that the beach didn't go away, erosion, whatever, sand moving and whatnot, this might not be as big an issue as it might be. Because in the original drawings, it looks like you come down the path, you go to either side, it's public beach, it's a big beach, relatively speaking. One of the questions is there any potential in any of the dredging that might happen in the next 5, 10 years or whatever, is there any possibility of replenishing some of that sand to the benefit of the intent of making the beach more like what it used to be, let's put it that way. And by the way, it used to be, the way the beach was laid out, that you could sit in front of the Fitzpatrick's property and it was a public beach. And because of, sand going away, et cetera, now as the town administrator said, maybe you get 20 minutes to sit out there, I don't know, between low tide and high, as things are happening, it goes away quickly. There are 2 brines there. I mean, obviously, And there's all kinds of folks who can speculate on the scarring of sand and whatnot. Are there any plans to do anything, you know?
Just before he gets up, and I don't think John may have be privy to this, but under the agreement, the town, it says the town will amend its pending Chapter 91 license application and accompanying plans for the proposed beach nourishment. So apparently there was an effort to do beach nourishment, and they referenced the DEP file, and to eliminate the request to be granted a license for the placement of dredge material seaward of the Fitzpatrick property. So the agreement that was signed by the town, or by the board, specifically does limit our ability to do dredging spoils in that area.
So let me be hypothetical with the ocean and whatnot moving around. If we loaded up lot with what I call lot 37, which is not in front of the Fitzpatrick's, but in front of the other property, and they just happen to move over to 36, we don't have any control over that, right? That's what we're dealing with here. Sand is moving. So.
Yes, sir, that's correct. I mean, that's what we do all the time. We know the predominant winds are southwest, and so we try to position our nourishment that feeds the beaches that are to the east of that, you know, of where we're putting the sand. So could we do it? Absolutely. We actually, in 2012, when I first got here, and we were dredging Allen Harbor, and we were dredging Herring River to make that pit, that dewatering pit over at Pleasant Street Beach. There was consideration of trying to put dredge material over there on that beach, and we didn't. Brakes were put on because of some pending legal issues. So,
And I'm not talking about putting it on the property in front of
No,
the
understand.
Fitzpatrick, so I understand that.
yeah.
But if I'm just taking lot 37, which is east, and lot 36, which is west, okay? I'm sorry, yeah, 37 is west, 36 is east. You know, if you happen to replenish 37, and it just happens to move over there, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't, maybe go the other way. But if it just happens to go over there and the beach gets bigger, we can put as much sand as we want on 37, right?
There's a limit to what we can do. We got to keep it to the low water mark, but we could nourish our public beaches. Any of our public beaches were permitted to put sand that is dredged and, you know, obviously test that's nourishable sand. Or a private property owner could request to purchase sand when we have excess. So our priority is public beaches, but we often sell sand to private homeowners.
Do we have any plans to dredge in something even close to this area? Something that makes it practical to move sand?
Well, we can move sand by you know, from anywhere. I mean, we dredge Allen Harbor every year. That seems like a long reach, but it just costs us more because we have to put a booster pump, but the county does that all the time. So every year we're dredging somewhere, and Allen Harbor would be the closest. I don't have any plans in the near future to do Herring River, but we could get sand there if need be.
Is there a way for you to tell us, or somebody to tell us if it makes any sense to do that? With the intent of trying to keep that part of the beach at least intact and get it back to where it was.
Well, I think we look at our public beaches in that area. If there's erosion, then it makes sense. We just did Gray Neck Road, small public beach that kind of is a small community that uses that beach. And we put significant amount of sand there because there was such erosion. And that sand will feed down towards Earl Road Beach and down further. So that's kind of how I, working with Eric Beebe, Park and Rec, who is in charge of the beaches, we look at our public beaches first and foremost and make sure they're nourished. And then if we have additional sand that we can put out to bid for private homeowners to bid on, then we look at putting it on private property.
Thank you, John.
Amy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Was there some accretion for the beach in front of these areas? Is that accurate?
There's accretion in front of some properties and erosion in front of others, as John was saying, because of the winds and the ocean currents. it blows sand generally in a west to east direction. So typically, like if we're looking at this picture here, if we're looking at it on the jetty on the left, the right side of that jetty is where there is erosion occurring. But on the other jetty, there's a, so if I may, I'll just point out.
Thank you.
So on that jetty, over there, you're seeing erosion right here. And then here, it's not much because you have them so close together. Sorry, that's these two. You're getting a little bit of accretion here.
Okay.
So if you put sand here, and I'm not a coastal geologist, but if you put sand here, say, look at a big jetty like Winchmere. Where do you see sand on the west side? On the east side, on the other property, you see depletion. So you can put sand here. You might want to think about putting it a little farther down. The sand's not going to come out and then just make an immediate turn right there. You want to put it so that it has the chance to go this way. Typically, this is what you call kind of end scour effect on this side of the jetty. And you'll see that throughout all the jetties on here. Just gets down. One side gets some, and one side loses.
And is there an issue with putting dredged sand in anywhere that there's accretion? Do we lose any right to?
That is not me, unfortunately. I don't look at property rights or anything like that, but, and each property is different. Some property owners own to high tide, some may own to low tide. It can be deed specific, things can change. But you're only allowed to put sand, per our permits, above mean high water. So we can't put sand in the intertidal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay, public. Good evening. My name is Mark McGowan. I'm on 15 Rabbit Run. I had 6 quick points to make, but Mr. Clark had brought up erosion, and he's worried about a single person in the town, and that is Mr. Fitzpatrick's property. What about lot 36 and 37? The fact is that as the town, and I can't pick apart because it was long before everybody that's sitting here, no one's been taking care of lot 36 and 37. The erosion took it all away. So the fact is that now here we are in this dilemma, whereas Gray Neck, Pleasant, Red River, all maintained and taken care of, but 36 and 37, which is Beach 22, was never taken care of. So it's the neglect from the town. And I'm not personally attacking you, I'm just saying, because you've only been here a couple of years, but I'm saying the comment that you made about the worrying about the erosion at Mr. Fitzpatrick's property really concerns me, because you shouldn't be worrying about one singular person. You'd be looking at it from a town's point of view. The town is losing a beach, which is lot 36 and 37. Get your arms in your head around the fact that all of you who work for the town should be worrying about the town's property, not a single person's, single residence. So that really needs to be addressed, and you all have to capture this, because the fact is you're not here to take care of one residence. It's the lot 36 and 37 that was given to the town back in 1924 for a public beach, and someone dropped the ball along the way.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's wise for me to engage in point by point. My main point to that, as I indicated on Bayview, in that part, the town has been accreting land. We've been extending land. My point is, in some areas in nature, according to the law, whether you accrete land, you gain land. If you have a land get eroded, then you lose land. And that was my main point, is we're subject to what nature provides to us.
Oh, no, I understand
And
that.
that's my main point.
No, but you were also bringing in the fact that you were, worried about his embankment and making sure that, you allocated more sort of resources to that so that it was less erosion. The fact is that if we had maintained 36 and 37, we wouldn't be worrying about it. We wouldn't even be talking about Fitzpatrick property, because the fact is the beach would be there. So the thing is, it's the time now that the fact is the town has to stand up and confront a situation that they've been neglecting for many, many years, and fill 36 and 37 and bring it up to what it used to be. The fact is, you've done it in Pleasant Street, you've done it in Red River, you've done it in Greenock every year almost. So when is it a time that you folks are gonna stand up against, and I don't know what his power and what his money is, because he seems to be able to throw it around and everybody runs for the woods. Oh my God, he's gonna sue the town.
Let me just cut you off. We are actually here because of the explosion that happened,
Right.
because of the fence that was put up.
Yeah.
So we are here to deal.
Oh, no,
with
no, I
the
understand.
fence. Okay,
Yeah.
so,
No, but
as far as your thoughts about him throwing money around, I'm a brand new set of eyes looking at this.
Okay.
Been in town my whole life.
Yep.
I've read the file and I've read the rest of the legal.
Okay,
Mr. Fitzpatrick bought a home on the water.
correct.
Mr. Fitzpatrick has been back before the town each and every time he has done something and been permitted by the town. So you're right, there may be a town issue here, but the issue that was originally brought before us with all of the emails and all the work was Mr. Fitzpatrick. By no means is this board doing anything special for Mr. Fitzpatrick, with the exception of the settlement agreement that was reached.
Yes, and
That we're trying to.
I apologize for that, the thing is, as I said, I think before, is that basically, you pretty much all knew, we have a couple of older ones, but the fact is, this goes back many years
The
ago.
point is, we are listening.
Okay.
No, we're not working for Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Okay. And thing is, well, because everything that I hear and everything that I read and everybody that's talking always seems to be, it's like, oh, well, you know, we shouldn't do this because of that. We should, excuse me, this is town property. We should be holding a deer. We don't have much town, especially beaches. And the fact is that that's what I just want to instill in all of you, is that, you know, we really need to be going after and resurrecting this lot 36, 37. So forget my 6 points. That was really what it all boils down to.
Thank you. Angela?
Can I just ask Amy for clarification? Amy, you made a comment as you were walking back, and I didn't quite hear it, but you can only put sand where above high water?
As per our permits, to put sand below mean high water requires additional Chapter 91 licensing with the state, as well as water quality certifications. So the town permit, and this is what we do on our beaches, we put sand above mean high water so that over time it works its way down.
What are the odds of the state providing a permit to do that?
I don't know if I can answer that because there's few. I don't have the answer to that.
Because that is a question that has to be answered positively to go forward, because virtually all of this land is below high water.
Right. A lot of other things such as, and I can't, not specific to this area, but in general, they look at, are there shellfish in that intertidal area? Things like that. As to where you couldn't put, whether you could or couldn't put sand in the intertidal.
I mean, there are a couple of problems with that. One is getting the permission, because I'm not sure it's given, quite frankly. But on top of that, it's the number of times you have to do it, because it just doesn't stop moving away. But we can find out if the state does issue those kinds of things.
Yeah. And I can review, and I don't have them with me. I mean, we do have this whole file of townwide beach nourishment, dredging and beach nourishment plan. That's what, we have a townwide permit. We're very proactive about doing it townwide so our citizens and all of our town can benefit. Like I said, I don't have it here with me as per the exact language of where that sand has to be. But again, above mean high water, I know we can investigate as to how to do it below, if you like.
Yeah, I don't know if we have the diagram or not, but the public beaches, it's not just lot 36 and 37, they actually continue on. So there is a possibility that, again, whatever, 1,000 feet down or 2,000 feet down, there may be a spot where we could theoretically put that in above mean high water. And then if it migrates, it migrates. So there may be other opportunities to do that.
Heather McGowan, also Radar Run. I did have a point of clarification if I could direct to Mr. Clark.
Sure.
So between the yellow and the pink line is town beach. Correct. So during low tide, mid tide, we can sit there. It's public beach.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I do think, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a great question, and I don't know, a little bit of common sense, I guess, if I'm going to say this anyway. I think that we may want to put some kind of marker in there so people have a sense for where the property is, where's public property and where's private property, so that way people know. The reason why I say about common sense is theoretically, the marker could be underwater for periods of time, and, you know, try not to do stupid things in government if I can help it, but, you know, if people see a marker and they see that it's underwater, I don't know if people recognize it.
Hi, thank you for all the consideration you're giving. I appreciate that. My name is Mark Shankman. I live at 36 Shore Road. I'd just like to understand where the sand, if I may go over to the map. There's another property right here that belongs to Morris's. So you've outlined where Mr. Fitzpatrick's property is. I'm wondering where you would put the sand. Actually, the gentleman in the back, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. He seems to be the most knowledgeable on this.
John Rendell, the Harvard.
I'm sorry, Harwich.
Yeah.
So this is, I assume, private beach, but you can walk across it down here in front of these other properties to stretch all the way down to Pleasant Road. So
The public property starts, it's kind of a straight line, but the public property starts where your hand is, that's the property line. Anything to the south of that.
So this is the Morris's property here?
Yes.
So this would be their yellow line here?
Yes.
And so all of this is public beach?
Below, right. Below that.
Right.
So it says Town of Harwich.
Below the blue?
That's right.
Okay, so you can put sand here?
Well, I think what she said is that you can only deposit sand above the high water, the mean high water. In this case, on this diagram, there would not be any location to be able to deposit it because it would be on private property. But that's by regulations. But what my suggestion was is that down further, take that distance to the west.
Down further where? The Pleasant Road?
That beach continues, that public property continues and runs to the east and west of that easement. There may be a spot further west that you could deposit it on the public beach at the high water mark to be able to accomplish that.
So you're talking about between here and Pleasant Road?
Correct.
But not at Pleasant Road? You're saying somewhere along, because the beach is fairly narrow between here and Pleasant Road?
Yeah, I don't know the geography well enough to know the distances, but somewhere to the west you could deposit the.
Prior to Pleasant Road?
Yes, or at Pleasant Road. I don't know if the migration from Pleasant Road to there is.
And Pleasant Road has been nourished, has it not?
Yes.
And so the sand hasn't drifted down from it. So that wouldn't really accomplish it because that's been.
If it's too far away, then it's
So
too far.
it'd have to be somewhere in there. Thank you.
One quickie. And how did Green Neck Beach, which was totally underwater, get filled?
John Morris.
You put sand in there,
We did. We put, we put the dredge pipeline as far up to where we can that meets the high tide mark. And we pump, and some of it goes down below the high tide mark, but that's very hard to control when you're hydraulic dredging and you're pouring sand and water out of that pipeline. So we do the best to position that pipe at the high tide line, and that sand falls where it may.
Question from Julie.
Amy, can I just ask you one other question? In terms of the jetties that are there, are they serving any purpose, or do you think that they're contributing to some of the erosion?
I'm helping.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. That's why I stayed standing up. They help some people and they hurt others, and without, some of them are town-owned, some of them are individually owned, some of them are Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay, that's fine, that explains.
But it, people always, just as a quick aside, people ask me sometimes, well, what if I remove this one, would it help me? And we have to look at, is there a whole system? So if you remove part of one, if you remove one, you're
It's really not
interrupting the
helpful.
system, and it usually hurt, they'll probably hurt you rather than
Yeah.
help you. So you have to look at it system-wide if you're gonna talk about replacing or.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Guess well, seems like all the money thrown around. I'm Dan Fitzpatrick. I wish I had as much money as I think I do. I came here tonight because I thought we were going to discuss the right of way. I didn't know we were going to discuss 37 and 36. I wish we had taken a moment to talk before you made the presentation, because you got a very good letter from your town attorney Ford a couple of years ago explaining to you that you have no land there at all. It's lost and you can't get it back. Once it's gone, it's gone. In other words, when you had a lot out here by whoever property this is, you had land here. When erosion went below that point and you disappeared, if sand comes back, you're gone. It belongs to him. Same thing applies over there. You're gone. I'm sorry, but I didn't do it. But it's gone. And you can't get it back. And you can't now say, well, there's a beach down there. No, there's not. Your lawyer told you in clear English. No, there's not. Now, you came and told all these people they have a beach there. You created a massive problem when we came to talk about it right away. If you want to talk about 37 and 36, I'd be happy to share a lot of data with you that is yours. So I don't know what to do tonight. I came because of the discussion of this, now you're discussing something that doesn't exist, and you're telling people what rights they have, which is gone. They don't have any rights to it. So I apologize, I'm upset. But I think you've got correct data in-house from your own attorneys explaining this. You've got, this line is from your attorney, town surveyor. We have done by engineering firms, certified registered engineers showing that it's gone. And all of a sudden, it's back. It can't come back. It legally can't come back. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not certain of that, Mr. Chairman, based on the information I received.
All I'm saying to you is this, I'll give you Ford's letter. Had you said before that we were going to discuss lots that are gone, I would have brought you that data. It's your data, it's not mine. And I didn't even pay for it, you did. So you gotta stop throwing money around like that. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. We're not going to, hold on a second. A hypothetical was brought up by Chairman Hughes. We are not talking about, we're not going to take any action tonight on doing anything with 36 and 37. That would certainly be another topic, and that we would need to get legal advice on. You are correct, we are here to talk about the easement. That is what we have been talking about, that's what we were talking about. Chairman Hughes offered a suggestion, and it was a hypothetical. So we will take up the beach thing at a later date, and we will certainly talk to legal first. On the easement, finding of facts was we don't own the easement. We have an easement across that land. The other thing that was determined was Amy, our conservation administrator, approved a fence and snow fencing to protect that coastal dune. It is a coastal dune. She is our conservation administrator. We are going to stand behind her decision to put the fence there. In settlement agreement that was reached, we agreed that we would do the work, so we will have DPW go back in and put the fence in. I visited the site, and based on where the fence is and where everybody was sitting on July 4th weekend, the fence and the snow fencing didn't make it so anyone could use that beach. So we have a recommendation from our conservation administrator. And it would be my position to uphold the settlement agreement for the time being, and then explore Chairman Hughes's hypothetical.
Okay, well, Fitzpatrick opened the door, he wanted to talk about the easement. Basically,
I don't want to talk about it, it was on the agenda.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, he made an agreement, and basically there was going to be no more encroachments and everything else. Well, he basically did once around the back, came up with Amy, and I feel for Amy because Amy shouldn't be wailed on than this one because she didn't know any different about the whole, legal aspect and what the agreements were and everything else. And what was interesting is then he was able to snow her into saying, oh yeah, for sure, you can get this all taken care of. But the thing is, he then came the destruction of well-established plants along the boardwalk, which even Amy at last meeting stated, any vegetation, even if invasive, as long as it is well established, should not be disturbed. Well, he just took out that whole, and cleaned it out. Basically, put in what he basically wanted to put in for shrubs and everything else, and talk about encroaching and taking over the easement, because the thing is that easement is basically a road. It's a paper street, if you want to call it, in the builders trades. And so he has now knocked down the full accessibility of the easement. And as I said, by also encroaching and adding to his dune and adding elevation and everything else. He basically, you give him an inch, he takes a mile. And the fact is so. But since he wants to reopen this matter, and since you folks are very fresh in understanding the whole components and how it all went together, I basically say yes, go back, and I mean go all the way back, talk to the contractor that basically ripped apart his basement with the concrete, the landscaper who deposited and filled over it and made a man-made dune. That's illegal.
Permitted.
No, it's, excuse me, well, it might be permanent of what he was doing, but the material that's in that dune, dig it out. Find out what that base of that dune is, and you'll find out there's some illegal concrete material in it that he should be fined for, and he should be levied for. And that should be all taken down, put it back into its natural state, and bill him for the work, because the fact is that he's built on illegal concrete. Talk to those two guys, because then it's easy enough, you can go down, I won't have to mention names here, but you should definitely talk to those two people. What was the name of this? That. That's it.
Chris?
Mr. Chairman, I just, to echo a little bit what you were saying, I think that the element here is on the easement, and the work that really needs to be done is to make the improvements back to the snow fence. I don't agree, at least based on the information that I had, that the land is in fact gone. But I do think that if the board wants, certainly we can look at with the harbor master and see, are there areas where we can put dredge material in to allow for nourishment in those sections of property which the town-owned beach still exists. I think it's a certainly reasonable request to make of the board to see if that's something that can be accomplished.
Any comments from the board as far as direction? Okay, I think we're not going to take an action on this tonight. The action that we are going to take is allow that fence to be put back in. The town is going to take that work and do that work, so the town will be putting it in. The other piece of the settlement agreement called for a sign to be at the foot of the path. I believe the signs continue to be taken down, or is there still a sign at the top?
I think the sign.
There's a sign still there. I believe it. So we're going to vote. We're going to not vote, but we're going to uphold the settlement agreement. With what Chris Clark just said, town administrator, he will explore. We will start to explore. But we have. To your comment about the easement, you have an easement to the water. There's nothing in any language that says the easement has to be 5 feet wide, 10 feet wide, 40 feet wide. It's just you have an easement to the water and to what beach is there. Everything that I've read and every piece of it that I went through, even John Chatham's work, even on the creation of the coastal dune, which is now a coastal dune, so it is protected under the Wetlands Protection Act. We couldn't go dig it up if we wanted to. It's protected. It's protected.
No, I think that's amazing that you folks can think of that, because the fact is that if it's in a foundation of concrete, then the fact is that's an illegal, and the thing is, and he got away with it. That's what you're going to let him do?
What I'm telling you, though, is everything that Mr. Fitzpatrick has done, he has come before the town and been granted the permission to do it. So Mr. Fitzpatrick is using the process that has been afforded to him by the town of Harwich. So the anger and the upset really is on everything that the town of Harwich did. And Mr. Fitzpatrick, I was down there this weekend, the invasive species that you spoke of. If you look at the left side of the walk walking down, it's very accessible to you. If you look at the right side of the walk, it is poison ivy, the bittersweet, and invasive species that really, from conservation's view, should be removed, and we should do the same thing on that side of the walk, which makes it a nicer walk for everyone using
We
the
have
beach.
beautiful rosary roads all the way up on the left-hand side. And the fact is, but again, it's that continuous, and this is why, talking about putting a fence back, that the fact is that he basically extended himself in elevation and illegal duning, basically, and the fact is now that's going to become under coastal if you continue to let it go. The fact is that when does it stop? That the fact is he got away with something illegal, and the fact is that I don't care if it's his contractors that did it or whatever, but it was done. The town got basically blindfolded or looked the other way because these two people were interesting enough. Well, was the chairman of the Board of Appeals, and the other one was one of the selectmen at the time. So I'm a little concerned about where this town is going, and that's why I'm a little bit agitated, because it blows me away that all these, that the protection goes to the minority instead of the majority.
It's not protection at this point, though, Mark. I want to make sure that you understand that we have done our homework on this. It's not protection at this point. And we have agreed that we don't own the land. Mr. Fitzpatrick has the right to protect that land. Our Conservation Administration has said that whether we own the land or he owned the land, she would recommend a fence there to protect that coastal beach. So that's the position that this board is going to take right now by upholding the settlement agreement that exists. And then we will look at the hypotheticals that we mentioned tonight as Chris says. I would hope that we can try and get along down there. As I said, I went down there 4th of July weekend and looked, and everyone seemed to be enjoying the beach. I don't believe that Mr. Fitzpatrick's gone, well, I'm not sure.
As I said, I'd like to see everybody stand tall and defend our right to have a public beach that was there and maintaining it like everything else. Great Neck is a perfect example because the fact is there was no beach there, and the fact is now there's a beach.
Well, I hope that you have the faith in us.
Okay. No,
They need to use the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we can keep record of it.
So this topic, we're going to close this topic for the night. Thank you all for coming and talking.
Yep, thank you.
Got 146 on the battery, 126 on one carbon 16. You should have one. That battery's full, I believe.
Okay, on to the next topic. The next topic is a request for a street light or lighting at Brooks Park. And this request came in form of an email to me from a friend of the Harwich Band.
That's correct. Hi. Thank you for having me here this evening. This came actually as a huge surprise last week that you were able to bring this topic so quickly in front of the Board of Selectmen, because my email only goes back a couple of weeks. I thank you for that. I have to tell you that my friend Gail Marshall, who's back here, is also a member of the Friends of the Town Band. And it was in a discussion with her that the subject originally came up. Something that we all see every summer when we play in the town band or attend the town band concert. One of the problems that comes up is the fact that if you look out right now, it's dark. And sometimes the concerts that we do later in the season, it's this dark at about 7:30, 7:45. Town band and other bands do perform at the Brooks Park in the, whatever that is, every week in the gazebo. And what happens is when the concert goes on too late, if you will, and sometimes that's only after a half an hour, it's too dark. And you'll see lots of people get up and walk away with their kids, like after the march around and things like that, because you can't see out there anymore. And it becomes a rather hazardous trip to get back to the parking lot or to get to your car if it happens to be parked over at the tennis courts or elsewhere in the area. So the thought came up that maybe it would be a nice idea to light the parking lot at Brooks Park. And perhaps if the parking lot were lighted, it would also provide a little bit of light that went over and also lights up the area where the people who attend the concerts sit. And maybe if we were really lucky, it would go over and help light up the pathway that goes around the ball field and over to the tennis court parking lot. This whole thing seems rather mundane after 3/4 of the audience had to leave because they must have all come for the last topic, which took a lot longer. So I'm sorry that there aren't more members of the town band here, but unfortunately many of them also play in the Chatham Town Band, which has a concert this evening in Dennis. So let's just be clear. The town band members all support each other, and many of them belong to more than one of the bands. The main reason that I'm suggesting a light for the parking lot is safety. I did get a note from one of the members of the town band, and she said that she is a nurse practitioner of some sort, and tells me that she's had to attend to 2 or 3 people over the last couple of years who have hurt themselves falling as they head for their cars after they leave the concerts. So it's primarily just for safety. And I don't see him here this evening, but I spoke with Ed McManus over the weekend where they were doing an arts and crafts show. And I asked whether there would be any advantage to them to having a lighted parking lot. He said, yeah, definitely. And I expected him to show up today, but he's not here. At any rate, that's about all I have to say, and I just think it's something worthy of consideration. Every once in a while, the Friends of the Town Band comes up with a couple of suggestions that we would need to run across in front of the town. And one of the members of the band also mentioned that there was some talk a couple of years ago, and nothing has happened about it. It has nothing to do with the light. But it does have to do with safety at the town band concerts, and that would be making the bandstand a little more accessible, because if there's handicapped people playing in the band, which there are, it's very difficult for them to access the bandstand. So I'll just throw that in at the end. Okay. For tonight, I'm requesting a light for the parking lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, and I did lie. I didn't mean to, but I thought that there was a light pole at the end of the parking lot. It is not. The light poles are on the other side of the street. Okay. You all got a copy of my original memo, I assume? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to maybe make a couple of suggestions. Looking at the policy, I think the policy kind of addresses streetlights, which are basically physically on the street. I think the request is actually kind of lighting improvements to a parking lot. So I know that Eric Beebe has done several of these on phase 3 of some work being done by the tennis court side. I think what makes some sense is to put in the request to him to look at the bandstand side and the tennis court side to see if there's like period lighting or some kind of lighting that could go in there. I did receive a call from the Historic Commission, Historic District Commission, I think, member this evening, and said that we just wanted to make sure that the lighting that goes in there is kind of correct to the historic period which the downtown is located. I think that does make a lot of sense. The other thing I would just caution, I know that lights sometimes are a positive thing. I agree 100% from a public safety standpoint. But I think it's important too that we need to have timers on those lights, because I've had in past experience where if you have lights by a tennis court, then you'll get calls at 2 o'clock in the morning that people will be out playing tennis and so on. So it's something that I think we should give some thought to. I did have an initial discussion with the town engineer to just give him a heads up that this may be coming, and to give some consideration as to how do we improve the lighting in that area and make it so people can stay and listen to the concert throughout. So at least my suggestion would be, I mean, if the board wants to tackle the issue of the moratorium, certainly the board's, that's your prerogative, it's your policy. And that policy has been in place since 2003, and I don't think it's really apropos in the circumstance because we're not talking about an actual street light on a public way.
The only comment I'd like to do is add that this should be more than just parking. I think they should take a look at Brooks Park and see what parts of it should be lit for various performances and everything else. And parking's one of them. And do a plan, a light plan. And I think you're absolutely right. There has to be a way to turn those on and turn them off. And that's what a lot of towns do, and I think that's the way you do it.
Peter?
Having been, I noticed, I think the chairman when this policy was put in place, and it's a prime example of why the board needs to go through and review its policies. There was a time when the town did not own the streetlights, that with, at the time, Common Electric, or whatever it was called at the time, every time a streetlight request would come in, we'd have to pay, on a monthly basis, yearly basis, whatever, for every light that was in town, and the fees were pretty high. So at that time, we were interested in we had to run a streetlight request. And, the budget started to get a little bit unnerving, if you will. The other concern, if I remember at the time, was, because this goes back when Tom Leach was the harbor master, and he was very much interested into not having background light and whatnot, because he was looking at the stars. I mean, I'll just say that. It has to do with the observatory that, at the elementary school, et cetera, and they're worried about this background light. Now, since then, of course, the town now owns its own street lights, so it converted exclusively to LEDs throughout the town, so they're a lot less expensive to own, operate, and maintain at this point in time. So this is a prime policy to look at, but I do agree that what we should do is look at a plan for that and see what the intended area, the intended intent of the lighting is, to make sure we're using the right fixtures and that type of thing, right about the illumination, et cetera. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to mention also that I went down and looked around to see what is available down there for light poles and stuff. And there actually is a street light on the Main Street side. There is a street light that's essentially just in line with the bandstand and with the light that's shining out on to the Main Street. If a light fixture were to be put on the opposite side of that pole, that would significantly help to light up just the ground area in the park. And there is also another light pole where the maintenance shed bathrooms are there. There's a light pole behind it as you look at the house from Oak Street side. As you look at that little house shed, there is another light pole back there. So there are some poles there. Somebody can figure out how to hook them up. And when I spoke to the people who do that bowling game down there, they have a light. You didn't give me much time, actually. I might have done more. Their area does have a light with a switch on it that I think they must have the key to or something like that. And they were actually out there bowling New Year's Day at midnight, they tell me. And so their suggestion was whatever light goes on should have a timer on it for the same reasons that you've already mentioned.
Thank you. Chris, do we need an action from us or just direction?
Well, I think as long as the board's comfortable that we do have a plan already underway that Bob Caprelli is working on. Now that's on the tennis court side by the trail. So we can have him do some lighting adjustments at that it was within the budget, if you would, or if it is within the budget. Over specifically by the bandstand, that's not something that the ADA accessibility issue of the bandstand or the lighting at the bandstand itself is not part of that project. But I think if we put it on the radar screen for him to look at, we'll send something to Eric and to Bob. If the board's comfortable with that, we'll just proceed based upon the board consensus that that's the direction we'll get ahead.
Consensus of the board? Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
I also don't think it has to be limited to standard telephone poles. There may be other ways of doing it.
Yeah, I think it may be nice to have some called period lighting. I just don't know what the lighting type will be for that area. But the nice thing about that too is that you don't get you don't get the height, so you don't get as much of the impact from it.
I see.
Excellent. Okay, next order of business is the request to look at environmental issues regarding West Harwich. Specifically, there was a June 23rd letter sent to the board and the town administrator from Ann Stewart asking the board to weigh in on pollution in West Harwich. Ann, would you like to comment on the letter? My intent is to recommend to the board that this be sent to the health agent because this really isn't a Board of Selectmen issue. This is a health issue, but because you asked during public comment to speak, I'll let you make a couple comments on the letter.
Thank you. I think that one of the reasons that it became curious and controversial among some of the West Harwich people is that, again, as I mentioned in the letter, there were 3 town representatives saying that the usage of if the West Harwich schoolhouse was developed as a museum or something, there might be a concern that people that were visiting that venue might have poor air quality, and that was mentioned by one of the county commissioners and a selectman and the finance committee at town hall. And so if those people and entities were concerned about random visitors that might come and visit that, then gee, what about the people that actually live in that neighborhood? And it may be that it all can be just tossed away. Maybe there's no health issue whatsoever, but for those 3 government representatives to express concern about visitors having poor air quality, then that needs to be nailed down. And I had a couple of thoughts. You've all received that letter, I take it, but I had a couple of thoughts in addition to that. What would be the result of sewering this sensitive area? Would that be better or worse than existing septic tanks? If sewers make the problem better, then West Harwich rather than East Harwich should come first. If it is decided by local, state, or federal environmental agencies that there has been an ongoing problem for almost 19 years, how does the town plan to help the residents of West Harwich? Homeowners might be very concerned about their property values if they needed to sell. A responsible real estate agent would need to expose the potential health threats of the house they are showing. And what of the wildlife who live in and around the Herring River? And what about the people who eat seafood from it? Is it polluted? And so which governmental agency should be looking into this? So I appreciate your wanting to collect the health department or whoever it would be the appropriate one. I think residents understand that there have been several studies done over this period of 19 years, but they've been very, I think, isolated studies of maybe a couple homes along Bank Street. Is that my understanding? It's just the air quality. So it just needs to be nailed down. I think that's the residents of people. Whatever it takes, whether it takes the feds or the state or whatever it is, put this concern to rest. Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I'm gonna recommend this to the health agent to start there at least. I am gonna respond to the comments made by the selectmen since that was me. The comments that I made were specific to expenditure of town funds on what could potentially be a pollution site. If you go on the website for DEP, there is reports on there and it does speak of the air quality. My point was simply, if we're gonna spend 250 to 500 and capital plan mentioned 700,000 on that school, we should have an environmental study and make sure that there is no health problems with that building. That's all I spoke of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm always amazed that there are people actually listening to me in town meeting. I assume it was me that you're referring to as the county commissioner that made the statement in your letter in regards to the situation over there. For the record, though, I did not stand at the mic as a member of a Barnstable County or as a county commissioner. The county has absolutely nothing to do with this and has no input in it.
and was not involved in it whatsoever, and I didn't want the public to be construed to see that I took time at town meeting to stand up and speak as a county commissioner. Yes, I am a county commissioner, but I'm also a taxpayer and a resident of the town of Harwich, and someone who's very involved in town meeting. And my comments on town meeting floor were personal comments from me personally, and from my knowledge from I spent on the finance committee here in the town of Harwich, and from having been around when the spill happened, that just knew that something was out there. And like you, the chairman of the Selectmen, I was also concerned because I know even recently when a housing project was going to be planned to be put there, that it was deemed to be difficult to maybe get some federal funding for that housing complex, knowing that there was a 21E problem on the site. So my concerns were, again, more towards monetary as opposed to health. As you just well stated, all the facts, this is a DEP supervised situation. They've been involved in it since day one, since it was discovered. There are test monitoring wells out there. I'm not really familiar with any health hazards that have happened in the last 20 years. There have been some supposed air quality situations reported from some of the neighbors, but again, no, those were not my personal concerns. And I just wanted to take this time again to make sure that I clarify, although that I wasn't personally mentioned in the letter that did say county commissioner, and I wanted the public to know that the county had nothing to do with this. That was personal comments. So thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the board?
My name is Gail McAleer. I live at 103 Route 28, and this is really surprising to me. I had heard the comments at town meeting, but I thought I overheard that there was some resolution to this, or that we weren't, wasn't that great of an issue. I've lived on Route 28 for the past 3 years now, so I'm relatively new, and I am just learning now some of the history of this. I guess my questions are, and I'm hoping that the health agent or whomever you designate as the person who's going to do this research will delineate some estimation of where this plume is now. There seems to be a lot of focus on that one building. I just live around the corner from that, and a plume, if it's coming from Dennisport, I guess is where it started, I really don't think it just went to that one property. And if I'm hearing that this contamination, this plume that is in the aquifer, it's not just water related, it's fumes coming up from the soil into the air. Is it in all of our homes? If it's in that property and that's so diligently being monitored, what about all the homes that are surrounding that property? Should we all be alarmed? 19 years this has been happening, and now because we wanted to do something and put a museum in that building where people aren't going to be there very much of the day, it comes to on the radar good, because the rest of us live there year round. We're in those homes all day and all night. And do we have fumes in our homes? If we have vegetables in the ground, are they contaminated by these chemicals in the aquifer? These are really serious questions to be answered, and I really am glad that this is being pursued for not just this particular property and hopefully some future use, that building might be to be fortunate. We could all be fortunate to find some suitable use for that building, but for all of us, the rest of us who are residents of this town, to find out, are we truly living in a toxic environment? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Just real quick to address the one building comment. That's what we were talking about when that pollution came up. If you, just for your own knowledge, until the health agent reports back, if you go on the DEP website and type in West Harwich, there's maps. They're showing where the plume, where it's been mapped. There is test wells. There is reports. So you can find some information on the DEP website.
And are there reports, to your knowledge, showing fumes, dangerous fumes?
there was fumes detected in some homes, and I believe it was on the street, it said, but I am not the health agent, nor am I in any way well-researched on this. Peter?
I think, looking at the data, and that was a couple months ago, whatever, but I think it was 2012, the last report that was done by DEP, I believe. And the information led me to believe anyhow that the plume is actually below the groundwater level, and that the discussion there was that as long as it's below the groundwater level, you weren't going to get the fumes coming up at that location. Doesn't mean there's something outside of that. You are right, these things could grow, they could shrink, they could do whatever. One of my concerns is that that report also, or some of the information said that eventually it ends up in the Herring River. And I don't know whether we should be thinking about doing something to keep it from going to Herring River. But I think just a review of the material would be helpful to get started. You know. And maybe what we do is have, I guess the suggestion would be to have the health agent review that material, come to us, just like we did with Pleasant Bay Alliance, and let's review the material.
Right, excellent point.
We want to allay your fears, or if there's an issue, we want to make sure we address the issue. The other thing I would say is, if in fact, in 2 years, whatever it is, that we're going to do something with that school, we ought to, as a precursor to that, we need to do an environmental study, we got to figure out how to do it.
Right, it would really be good, and I think helpful to determine whether that is an issue, so that that no longer is brought up as a potential detriment or reason for not utilizing that building. It would be good to know, yes, definitively, yes.
Or your house either, by that.
Or my house, yes, thank you, and my neighbors as well.
Andrew?
I think it's important for the health agent to go over the situation and report to you. What I can remember when this came up, so this is a little bit of memory, was that there was a problem in Dennis, actually a laundry kind of operation. And the material went underground and started heading towards the Herring River. And it's been doing that for a long time. It's part of it. And as that happens, as it gets closer to the river, it gets less potent. And during the time that this building, we were talking about building with Hatch, the health people here said, it's no big problem. You can build there. You can solve it by doing X with that particular building. A number of people who had homes asked for help and had their homes checked during that time, and I don't believe there was any kind of significant problem. But I think it's important to bring it up every once in a while and go over it and get it handled for you. So, but I think you don't have to worry that much for the next couple of weeks is what I'm trying to say.
Thank
you. Yes, just a quick comment, Duncan Berry, I'm also on Main Street there. A couple hundred feet from the original spill site in Dennisport, the old dry cleaner right there where I guess it's Rite Aid. About 25 years they ran there was basically an ongoing active chemical spill until the mid-60s, until the place was torn down. I remember it pretty vividly. I mean the building. But I just want to get an idea of what the sense of urgency is here. If something that's 20 years old can come up, be brought up in a way to, block our intentions to utilize a local asset here, but it's not important enough to look into what the ongoing health impact is for the residents. Is this going to be something that's going to be like a foregrounded here, or is this going to be, what's the timetable, do you think, on something like this?
We're going to hand it tonight to the health agent. The health agent will take it up. We can get you a timeline if you would like. As far as the comment to block your project, right. I don't think that there was an effort to block your project.
This was a pretext.
No, this is a issue that was brought up at several committee meetings outside of the Board of Selectmen, and it was brought up by Tom Peterson, a realtor who was very familiar with that area. It was also brought up that there was a housing thing. So
that's correct. It wasn't brought up that we weren't looking to do housing.
I certainly spoke on not building on top of a potential.
Right.
And as our health director noted, it would make sense, and she would request or suggest that a private health person go in there and do a study on the property. So with that, I think we've we can get you a date, but I can't speak for Paula and her.
All right, well, I'll check in.
Thank you.
That's just one more question. I mean, I thought I just heard you say something about you didn't want to build on a site that could rebuild.
Spend town money.
Spend town money. So just to clarify, because as the gentleman, as Selectman just mentioned, there is a Habitat for Humanity project in that area where 4 to 6 new homes will be built. I just want to double check, so we're certain that that area is safe?
With all due respect, we're getting way off subject.
Okay, but...
The Habitat project, the Hedge project, the West Harwich School did different. We had a letter from Ann Stewart, we're addressing the letter by sending it to the health agent. I would imagine if they do any building there and the plume is detected there, they will do their own environmental study. Chris?
Mr. Chairman, I think what we'll do is we'll look at the DEP files, see what recommendations they have, and then obviously also with the health agent, see if we can get both of those pieces together and report back to the board. Hopefully we'll do that as timely as possible.
Okay, moving on, new business? Oh, no. D, finalized town planner job description. Chris?
Yes, I'm okay. In terms of the last selectmen's meeting, I had presented the town planner job description, and there was a request by the board to bring it back to the union to have a union discussion to see if there was any concerns. The union did raise some concerns. The two primary ones, they did not want to see a decrease in the experience. We had in there I think a bachelor's degree and 5 years experience. We also had the terminology, though, that it would be any equivalent combination. So if somebody had a 2-year master's degree program, then they could have 3 years experience plus the master's degree to get to 5. So they wanted to have the 5 in there, and I don't really have a issue with that as long as the comparable experience can be calculated. So I do recommend that we go forward. They did make also just the observation that by contract, they can ask for it, to actually internally post it first before we go out. I don't quite understand the hesitancy with doing that. I thought that if we did an external ad and had an external ad come in 3 weeks out, if you would, that would give us sufficient time to go through and just, if we did have internal candidates, to process that. But they've asked for the language to be upheld, and I don't really have an issue with upholding that. It does mean a little bit longer of a search process, but I would rather do it right and not generate any additional issues. So with that being said, I would like to, if the board is comfortable with the final revised town planner job description, that we will commence the advertising process internally first, starting tomorrow.
Okay, any comments from the board? Motion?
Just a quick question. So, Chris, how long do you allow it to be internal? What's the time frame before you actually go outward with it?
Yeah, I think, and I should have checked on this, but I think what we have is 10 working days. But we have an agreement with the union that they have the SEIU members get first priority, so I think we posted, and they have basically a week to apply, and then we open it up to anybody in the organization. That's something that, since I've been here, I've brought that interpretation with me to try to encourage. There's nothing worse in an organization than to have no place to grow. So by creating that opportunity for people to be able to apply, I've had some unions unfortunately challenge me and say, well, I think it only should be members of our union that can apply. And I think that really discourages, in this case, it's a management position, and why would one manager go from one discipline to another, and do they have those credentials? So I think it's important to give the people in the organization the opportunity to be promoted from within. So about 2 weeks is the short answer to it.
Peter?
Mr. Chairman, with that, I would move that we approve the job description for the town planner and move forward with the recruiting process.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the town planner job description. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, on to new business. We have a request to support the town of Chatham's request for legislation to clarify the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's claim of open waters and seabed to the west of Monomoy National Wildlife Refuge. Peter?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the request.
I second
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to support the town of Chatham's request for legislation to clarify the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service claim of the open waters and seabed to the west of Monomoy National Wildlife. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next is the proposed intermunicipal agreement between the town of Orleans and the town of Harwich for adult daycare program services. Chris?
Yeah, just to remind folks, as part of the budget process, there was a request from the town of Orleans that they have an adult daycare, folks that are kind of pre-Alzheimer's, if you would, very simplistic overview on my part, but and they offer a pretty good program. They do invite residents from other towns to participate. The reimbursement rate, when they did an analysis, they found that they're actually losing money on every external person they bring into the program. So they did offer us to, they were going to, I think, eliminate some of the people from other towns. They did give us an opportunity to allow for folks to come in if we pay that differential. I think it's about $20 is the differential. So they did send over, in this case, it's a specifically intermunicipal agreement. We have budgeted $7,500, I believe, to assist residents from Harwich that go over to that facility and do that. And the board did vote as part of the budget process to include the dollars. So we would do this IMA with Orleans for 2017 up to the amount that we have in the budget, $7,500.
Discussion from the board?
Just a question. So if anyone shows up and wants to go into this program, the town has to pay for a piece of it, no matter that person's financial ability to pay?
The short answer to that is yes. We have 8 current going over this last fiscal year, and each person, they are reimbursed through Medicare, Medicaid, $55, and it's actually $75 cost. So the $20 loss over a long period of time, their choice was close their doors to everyone except Orleans, or allow us to come in. So even if my mother went and my mother could afford to pay, they're still going to charge for anybody that comes from the towns outside that rate. So it covers our Harwich people, if you will.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Your mother, if you will, if she could afford to pay for it, could she pay the $20 rather than the town?
We appropriated money for a set amount based on the low-income people that have been attending. So a short way to put it, rich people usually don't go. The people that can afford it are not the people who've been attending. The people who can afford it are having people come more into their private home versus going into the daycare, or they're going to the next step, which is the adult health center, which is even more money. This is that step before, as Chris said. And the folks that we have, Chris got to see with me firsthand when we went. It was like old home week as we walked in, but they, for the most part, are fairly low-income folks. So, does that answer your question? Sorry if it was confusing.
I just point out, I think it was mentioned, we did build this into the budget. It was part of, I remember distinctly on town meeting floor addressing this as one of the items that we put in that we do for this year. I've met some of these folks myself and know some people, call them providers, if you will, spouses, whatever, that benefit from the fact that they get a little bit of relief. You know, when these people are in this center, they know they're safe, and they can go about and get a little bit of relief and go go do shopping or go do their appointments or whatever, it's very much needed. And with that, I would move that we enter into this or approve this memorandum agreement between the town of Orleans and the town of Harwich for this daycare program.
And authorize the chair to sign.
And authorize the chair to sign.
And we will be monitoring the billing as well. My Council on Aging department, as the billing comes in monthly, we'll be paying it out of that line item. We may find that we have money left at the end, or we may find that we, are caught short. We just don't know for this particular year, but we're going to use it as a trial. And so far, it's worked for our residents really, really well. We're one of the highest users, actually.
Thank you. So it's been moved and approved to, move to approve the proposed intermunicipal agreement between the town of Orleans and the town of Harwich for adult daycare service and authorize the chair to sign. So it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion on it? All in favor? Aye. Okay, next up is C, which we are not going to take up tonight. We're going to table this due to new information that came in today. This was for a lease extension for Allen Harbor Marine Services for additional 2 years for boat storage on the town property at Allen Harbor. This hasn't gone through the harbor master yet. This hasn't gone through. We have to go out to bid. The contract is not able to be renewed at this time, so we have to go through the process.
Yeah, maybe, Mr. Chairman, the existing contract, there's two issues. One, they had an existing contract where they could store boats at Allen Harbor. We did improvements to that we took federal funds from, which now does not allow us to do lease agreements and park the boats there. So we have relocated those to Saquatucket Harbor. I always get nervous when he gets up as I'm speaking.
Just real quick.
I know I misspoke somewhere.
State funded, not federal funded.
State funded.
Yeah,
thank you.
I'll sit back down.
Don't go too far.
But because we took state funding, we cannot do an arrangement there. They did, that was in their original lease to relocate. We did relocate them over to Saquatucket per the lease, but now as of May of this year, we no longer have legal basis in which to do that extension. The one option, or the one, a couple items that I just want to bring up under this topic is that we have had them at Saquatucket Harbor, and I think one of the things that we would look at is to see if we could utilize not only Saquatucket Harbor, but now that we own the Downey property, to do some of the material, some of the boat storage on that. We have to stay away from any federal or state-funded areas because they have commitments to not have that as leased property, because there is some of Saquatucket. But one of the things that we would potentially do is I think we may have to go to town meeting for the lease to be able to do a lease above 3 years. So we've missed our opportunity to go to town meeting. So we would most likely potentially come back with like a license agreement for 1 year to kind of do that bridge to get us to the lease. And then to actually look at the 3 areas that conceivably we could do on the 2 on Downey property and the 1 on Saquatucket. So I just wanted to at least give a little bit of overview to the people that may be watching.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Next up is amend the personnel bylaw for seasonal hourly wage employees. Chris?
Just thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this one, we went through the schedule and we realized that we did not include everybody that we should have included. One of the things we ran into is we budgeted at a certain level at this the 1050 level, and we had 3 people who were at the step 2. So instead of increasing grade 2 to be equal to grade 3, we thought it would probably be just easier to move those positions up and get them to the rates where we have in the budget. So we're talking about the harbor assistant, the playground instructor, the parking attendant, and then there's 2 new positions, summer ball instructor and summer ball director. The summer ball director would be in grade 4. Just in terms of the dollar levels here, just so people are aware, it's $11.48 to $13.52 for the summer ball director. That's grade 4, and then on grade 3, that's $10.50 to $12.50. Some of this was caused by the increase in the state minimum wage that has made it a little bit more difficult to recruit folks.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion from the board on this? Any motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we approve and amend the personal bylaw for seasonal hourly wage employees.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend the personal bylaw for seasonal hourly wage employees. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next up, Finance Director / Town Accountant job title. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in terms of this, I was asked to look into, there was a question was raised about how did the position of Finance Director come about. So we did take a look, asked staff, who's been around for a little bit, to be able to have some history on it. They were able to find that there was an executive session negotiations back on Monday, February 4th, 2008, in which the then town administrator presented a contract for David Ryan, who was the person at the time. And it's my understanding that Mr. Ryan had asked that the position title be more made up to date, if you would, more consistent with what his counterparts had. And Finance Director was much more of a common term. So, and because the charter had the requirement that it be town accountant, that's where you came up with the hybrid Finance Director / town accountant. So that contract request was made in executive session, and then at the same open session was voted with an acknowledgement that the title change had been done. In my experience, this is something that generally, because the town accountant's position is in the charter, that generally you would do a charter change to update that position as kind of a housekeeping item. So I think that to have a little better presence than just a, no offense to the board, but where it's a charter position, it probably should be updated in the charter to reflect the actuality of what it's called now.
Thank you, Chris. Janelle?
And under whose direction, because we've talked about how Finance Director and Town Accountant are, one is under Board of Selectmen's purview and one is under the Town Administrators, so how will it end up?
Well, I believe if you change the charter to, if you change the title, that section of the charter that says Town Accountant, under the Town Accountant, that is specifically a Board of Selectmen appointment. So if you change the language from Town Accountant to Finance Director / Town Accountant, or just Finance Director, and you don't change anything else, then it would still fall under the Board of Selectmen. When the Finance Director position was not specifically detailed in the charter has a requirement that it's the administrator's responsibility to do the recruitment and the selection. Any appointment that I make as the administrator has to be confirmed by the Board of Selectmen. But one way or another, the board gets the final say, if you would, on the personnel. But that would be a judgment call of the board. If you want to keep it simple, my suggestion would be just change Town Accountant to Finance Director and leave everything else alone in the charter, and then the board keeps that protection. If the board wants to change it, you have to change the language.
Comments from the board?
I just think that what we need to do when we get to talking about the charter is put together a list of things that we would like. Housekeeping things, and send them along to the charter.
The consensus of the board to take this to charter review and have them change the name?
Yes.
I think we can do it jointly with other things at the same time.
I think we do this one now because it's up now. Who is the liaison to the charter? So Angela, you'll mention this too? Thank you.
We'll have to have a chat. Yeah, the chair of the charter review committee has gone through an operation and they've had a little bit of time off, so I don't know when we get started. That's why I was hesitating.
Yeah, it's just a suggestion too. We may, if the board just wants to change from accountant to finance director, we could just have John Giorgio. The charter review committee, their rule, not mine, wanted to just vet actual language changes. So we'll have to submit that language change. So we can draft that up and submit it for their consideration.
Thank you. Okay, on to town administrator's report.
And in light of the time, and we'll kind of cook through these. We did have the MEMA, which is Massachusetts Emergency Management Association, had a incident command system in which they did some training. Actually, unfortunately, they did the training, I think, the same night as the 208 meeting.
Yeah.
So Charlene wound up going to that. I went to the 208 meeting. But that is something that instant command system, that I know in my experience, the folks at FEMA, the federal level, and MEMA, the mass level, like to have the elected officials have some sense for, in an emergency, what roles that you guys play. So it is something that they've provided some training. We did put in the packet so you can have kind of the full slides of what's entailed in that. And I'm sure that they will be offering additional training opportunities. Charlene did go through the training opportunity and she got her certificate to show that she completed that class in a appropriate manner.
You're not going to go through all these slides?
I've had a tough night
Bill
already.
was looking to go through.
Can you let us know when the next class is?
The next class, we will share that with you guys. On just a couple other things, on Friday, I stayed around and we have, actually we had an uninvited guest that showed up as well. We have the draft Colebrook study is coming to a final stages. So I thought that it was, actually I was pretty pleased with the results. I think in a nutshell, in the comprehensive wastewater management plan, we have that we'll do a study and there may have to be some improvements that can be made to offset. If there's some improvements made at Colebrook, we may forego having to put in sewer for 200 homes. The good news is the results came back that yes, that's definitely a possibility that if some changes could be made. I guess the changes to be made would have to be made in the Harwich Conservation Trust, HCT's property, not necessarily us. But it may be something that we want to consider partnering up, because if there's an opportunity to avoid some of those costs and do like we did with Muddy Creek, have some of those cost avoidance issues and get similar results to be worthwhile. So at least the data came back favorable that there are some alternatives that can be pursued to get similar results. So they will be doing the final stages of that, and then we'll probably have them come in before the board to kind of do the overview. Also on, just as under contracts, the CDM folks, they had come in for doing the final stages of the CWMP. They actually are planning on doing, what is it, DRI? Development and Regional Impact here in Town Hall. So we have exhausted the funds from the original appropriation to have CDM through this process with us. So town meeting, actually in part of the operating budget, we allocated about $20,000 for that, and then $20,000 for a outside consultant to help, or an internal person to help with the, I hate to say selling of the plan, the informational or the marketing of the plan. The CDM quote did come in at $25,000, so that was a little bit higher than I anticipated. But we do have sufficient funds. The person that helps us market it would be limited to $15,000 as opposed to the 20. Both of those were guesstimates when we went into the budget process.
Chris, I'd like to put this as a board topic for the next meeting, to go through this contract and discuss, to maybe get David Young to come in. I mean, there's a fairly extensive scope of work here, and I think that it would be appropriate to talk about what the next step is. Since
well, I did sign it, so it's under the $50,000 threshold. But in terms of kind of the next stages and where we are, and certainly that makes sense for him to come in and chat about that.
We also need him for the Chatham negotiations.
He's on for the Chatham negotiations.
No, I know, but he's got to get a contract.
Part of it, correct.
We need to have an
Yeah, there are certainly some issues that need to be reviewed. On the, also, I just wanted to bring up on the Saquatucket land side, as that process of doing the review and looking at how that process is going to lead. I think one of the things that I had a discussion on Friday, Mike Lack was at the meeting, and I know one of the concepts that we had put forth early on in the as part of the capital budget, that one way to offset some of the costs of the land side was to market and have prepared kind of a sale of the Bank Street property. So if we have the old harbor master's office, if we were to have that actually out to bid and have a bids come in, then when we go to town meeting, which actually town meeting would consider, if everything goes according to plan, at May of 17 to do the land side development. And if that, I think the original estimate is about $2.5 million. If we could get 100, 200,000, some number for that property, with the idea that the property wouldn't become available until we make the move to Saquatucket Harbor. But that may be something to show to the townspeople that we are utilizing the sale of property to offset the cost of the relocation of the harbor master's office. So I just wanted to at least put that on the table, because I think that we'd have to do an appraisal and kind of get started on that process sooner than later if we're going to try to line that up. It's something for the board to think about. I had that, and we do have a potentially interested bidder in HCT owns the property adjacent, and they currently do use some of our property for parking. So something to give some consideration to. Also, I did have an issue came up about Muddy Creek and the fast-flowing water. So we did send out, actually I have a picture, they did put up, I guess kayakers had kind of, I don't know if stranded is the right word, but had a tough time with the flow. I can pass it around, but there is signage that Chatham put up, and John Rendon and I talked, so we will put up some additional signage. There was signage that was put up that no motorized craft. That actually gets pretty low. I think I saw a couple of people walking in certain sections. It's only like 6 inches deep. So if you were to go up there with any kind of motorized vehicle, a motorized boat, you probably wouldn't make it back. So, but we didn't take into account to make sure that people that have kayaks and stuff, that it is a pretty swift current. So we wanted to make sure. So we will put up some additional signage to alert people to that fact.
So that sign says no swimming. A lot of children swim there. Is that something that is going to be able to be enforced easily, being that there's no lifeguard on duty there or anything?
Beach, you mean up the creek?
This is going to be at the bridge.
From the bridge up.
Yeah, from the bridge up. I mean, there is.
The west side?
Estuary.
The west or north, yeah.
Not the ocean side, the other side. The creek
Okay.
side.
Well, so from the bridge outward
Inland.
towards the ocean, they can go in.
They can
Yeah,
still
into the
swim there?
wreck. They can go in there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I think we just want to at least alert people that during certain times, and I think from discussion with John Rendon, some of the factors, it was an incoming tide, but it was also 20-mile-an-hour winds. So there were certain factors. I know I've been down there, and I mean, I don't know, we hit it water each time I go down, but it doesn't look like it's really that fast flowing. I've seen young kids in the water, but he did say that he certainly could see where that could be.
Because I think you're going to have Paynes Creek kind of issue there, which was kind of nice for the kids to, you know,
Yeah, when it's low tide
when it's low
especially.
tide and stuff. But not to go further in, obviously, but outward.
So where is this sign? Is this
That's on the Chatham side. We'll put one on the Harwich side too.
but is it on
Putting
the,
in the creek.
It's at
on which
the
side?
Jackknife Beach as you're,
This is at Jackknife Beach.
right at the base.
When you
This
get
is
out.
looking out the creek.
Yep, from standing in that parking lot.
Yes.
And this is where people swim, right here.
Yeah, the sign.
Well, the kids were up at the rocks when I was there last too.
Who's going to put up a sign this meeting is
Are you
not.
I know, I was gonna say, the signage just alerts people to the concern. We can
We're going to have a sign that says that danger, somebody get hurt and say, I'm assuming he's going to
Right.
danger.
Okay.
And then the last item I had, I did pass out, or actually I was Peter, pass out memorandum, just, the board approved a additional position for the conservation agent. And one of the things that we kind of had some initial discussion was, where do we put that position physically upstairs on the second floor? And I had a little bit of a discussion, and I remembered that Bob Caffarelli, the town engineer, and Paul Sweetser, the surveyor, had made an inquiry about being relocated over to the Alpro House, which if we were to do that, that would have a benefit to free up some space to allow us to do some additional relocations upstairs. So he did, I meet with Bob on a weekly basis, so he said that, you know, he wanted to have me resurface that request. And I have put this before the board in the past. I mean, technically, the administrator is supposed to control all the facilities and make the facilities work, because I've, I guess, numerous times asked about this building and quite honestly the status of it. I have decided that any issues related to alcohol, I feel more comfortable kind of at least alerting the board. Not something for tonight, but it is something we can put on the agenda, because as we go to recruit that position in conservation, we will need to look at that upstairs. And hopefully just talking about minor tweaks and no major changes.
Thank you, Chris. We will put that on the next agenda.
That concludes my comments this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Selectmen's report will do goals and objectives last. So anyone have any?
Can I just ask that sometime in the future when it's appropriate, we get Jeremy done on the waterways scopes, give us an update on where they are in the process of getting bids to do the harbor.
Yes.
Yes.
We're going to start that project in the fall. We have to get it close to it.
Yeah, they got to get close.
Just like to find out where we're on the process and what we're doing.
Okay.
So,
Yeah?
I have nothing.
Okay. Goals and objectives. So,
I now have something.
yeah.
5 things.
I would like to apologize to the public because there's 2 documents that are here that they didn't get because they're not in the packet, but I will make sure they're in the packet for next week. The one that is in the packet titled Board of Selectmen FY17 Goals and Objectives, dated July 5th, 2016, is one document tonight. There's another document which is 7 pages. It's goals, objectives, actions, and deliverables. And then the last is the goals and objectives FY 2017, which is just an outline of the larger document, goals, objectives, with the actions and deliverables on it. So on the outline, it shows that there are 6 goals and there are 16 objectives. This is an accurate reflection of what all of you sent me, along with actions and deliverables that were in the very first memo that I sent out that I classified, I think, as too wordy and got rid of it. These goals and objectives, to me, I view these goals and objectives as Board of Selectmen goals and the town administrator goals in conjunction with staff in partnership with the Board of Selectmen. So several of these goals in here, we can start on the FY 2017 summary, the outline. Several of these goals and objectives will be, other departments will be involved. One of them will include the charter review. The financial leadership and stability will include the finance director / town accountant. I would ask that whatever we ultimately vote on, that each Board of Selectmen member picks 2 to drive and be directly involved in for reports back to the Board of Selectmen. Some of the feedback from board members was too many. We have to narrow our focus. There's too much information. Some of the commentary was that there's not enough information and there really is no direction set for the town administrator. And I will speak for myself first. The last year's goals and objectives were similar to the one that's in your packet, and there was no real actions or deliverables discussed. And at the end of it, when Chris was given his performance evaluation, for myself anyway, I wasn't happy with the completed goals and objectives. And in fairness to Chris, I think that there was no real request from the board. On the subject of there's too many, I looked at 18 towns on the internet and their goals and objectives. A lot of these towns do actions and deliverables. I printed the Chatham one, which I will share with you, but you just go on their website. The Chatham goals and objectives is 7 pages also. And theirs is very specific, like the document that I handed you with the actions and deliverables. And there's also a Basically, at the end of it, there's a checklist on what's been done, what's pending, and where they are. So I think that the 7-page document is very specific, very detailed. There is a lot on there, but there's a lot of people involved. So I will open it up for discussion from the board. Who would like to start? Julie?
I find it very helpful because it gives us the specifics, gives us amount, gives us the deliverables, as you said, but also gives us the guide. And I think it obviously involves the various departments, the heads, town administrator, finance, etc. So I don't know if I can make a motion. Can I make a motion? Or is it too
I
early?
don't get too early. Let's let everyone else
Mr.
speak.
Chairman, I have a little bit of a concern that this material was just distributed this afternoon. There's no opportunity for it to be viewed by the public.
Yep.
So I would strongly encourage that no specific vote be taken this evening, just because of that.
No, thank you. Peter?
I would say my basic requirements would not necessarily this sheet, the summary sheet, for the details, because some of it I think is just wrong, and I think I sent some of it to you. We have to clean up. And I also think that, for instance, in here, a number of things, to me, point to technology. I think we take all that stuff and we say, you know what, we need a 5-year technology plan. We need a plan, a technology plan that gets in the future. Now, maybe it exists, I don't know. Maybe it needs to be updated, whatever. But anything associated with technology should be lumped into one bucket, and we need to do that, in my opinion. The thing about the audits, the audit reports and whatnot, they said as soon as there's a problem, that I don't know about, but maybe we should have a discussion about what we think that problem is, to go back and look at 3 years of audit reports and see if we've done anything about it. I don't know what we're doing there. I mean, if we just get a report on what the latest audit is and say, is that we're taking care of those issues now, I don't know.
Can I just make a point on the audit thing? The last time I was chair, a while back, I sat in with Dave Ryan and did his report with the auditors and got a pile of information and then shared it with the board. And I think if we haven't been doing that, we should go back to doing that. We've been on for 3 years, so I don't think of the reports.
I think the financial thing that you're most interested in, the so-called transparency and looking at what's the use of the funds for departments. My suggestion there is you very carefully take 1 or 2 departments into a trial case, or a beta case or whatever, and bring it back to us and say, is this really what we want? Is it in the form we want before we launch out and do, I don't know, 16 departments or something, because we could waste a lot of time and end up somewhere we don't want to be.
I understand that. I also think that there's probably a lot of discussion on exactly how you deal with indirects and how you deal with that. We have to come to agreement.
Yeah, there's discussion here about getting ourselves more information to the public for a town meeting. I remind everybody we have a voter information committee in place. I think Julie and I are leading ladies on that. I think in that case we should charge that group. We have to change their scope or whatever, at least meet with them. Work through our liaison and say, okay, can you get these, can we come up with these ways of doing this, and let them do it as opposed to us. That's what we're charging for. So let's not work around somebody's boards.
So
but I think it's tweaking this. It's not, I'm not saying that this isn't a good thing to have. I just think we need to spend a little time on it.
So, just to address the 2 things that you brought, the 3 things that you brought, town technology. I think it's reasonable to say that all of these goals and objectives will not be complete in Chris's performance evaluation. We'll still be able to grade based on what's done. Certainly, we're not going to solve all the town's technology issues this year. On the town audit report, the number 1 complaint that I get from the people of the town of Harwich is lack of transparency. Now, one board member told me, well, we provide all that information. So I was on the board all last year. I got the audit report. Am I supposed to decipher what's in that audit report and take the recommendations and implement the recommendations? Or should we as a board get the recommendations from the finance director and with an explanation? And why shouldn't we show that to the public? So all of this, again, going into this is, and with what you just said, we will work with the committees, and the committees will come back. But again, I look at this the same as I look at Chatham's, the same as I look at Southbridge, where Chris used to work, the same as I look at Arlington, the same as I look at Truro, the same as I look at most of these towns. And it is detailed actions and deliveries. Some of them Chris will be able to check off in a half an hour. Some of them he may not. So the ones that you're speaking of that are wrong, fine. But it was also mentioned by a board member that several of these items on here in the charter he has to do anyway. So should we remove them? Well, this document can go online with its index basically, and then we can do the same sort of thing that Chatham's doing and show the residents what we're doing. So I don't believe we should take anything off that's in the charter just because it's in the charter. It's 6 goals with 16 objectives and very clear direction for our town administrator on what we want. And if you read these, none of these, not all of these, have to do with just Chris.
Well, that's the point. This is the Board of Selectmen's goals and objectives. My understanding is the process is that after we agree on these, that Chris then comes back with his goals and objectives, not necessarily mirroring all these, but the ones that he has to deal with. And we approve those, and that's how we go forward.
Well, I also, the other thing I think about, you mentioned the charter is, obviously the charter is what we abide by, but I also think it's good to have a correlating document that helps define the specifics of the charter. And I know that overall, we're going to be more familiar with those things than, maybe the average taxpayer. But I think ultimately, it's good and productive for the members of, the town, the various departments, but I also think it's helpful for the voters to have something that corresponds. And I think it's helpful for me as well. So I like the format. I like the ability to say this is what the charter, contains. It's already in the charter. I understand that. I don't find it duplicative, though. I find it, to be additional tool. So I find it helpful.
Jan?
The one thing that I would like to see on this one that we got today that is on the July 5th, which is in the packet, is housing, to develop a more substantive housing plan that does not necessarily negate the idea of town-owned housing, which I believe was written in there. I'm sorry, I shot my computer.
It is.
Where was that? I only saw the Hetch and Habitat things.
Planning.
It's in, planning it, page 5.
And I think if you read through this, a lot of these things, most of the things that are in the other document are in here. The difference, I believe, in this document versus all these other basic ones is we're giving clear direction on what we want and what we want delivered and the actions that we want taken. And, the Board of Selectmen goals and objectives certainly have to be, Chris has to agree with what his are going to, and he's going to have to propose them. But to me, this gives me an ability to give Chris a real grade on leadership. So he's going to have to delegate to Andy the financial parts of this and bring them back to the board. Now, that gives me an actual ability to grade Chris on leadership. The performance evaluation that we do on him, regardless of whether we change it or not, is going to be a grading system, and we don't work with Chris on a day-to-day. This is pulling things together. Chris?
I did have an opportunity to kind of look at it today, Mr. Chairman, this afternoon, pretty quickly. I agree that there are some things in there that are pretty good. I would caution, though, I think there's 41 directives to be accomplished. I think it's interesting that when Southbridge gave me, I can't remember what the number was, 35 goals and objectives. That's the reason why I'm sitting here tonight. Because it was a recipe for failure to have too much.
Chris, I'd like to get from you,
So,
I'd like to get from you what you think. We have 2 weeks. I'd like to get from you what you think is a recipe for failure in this.
I think it's just too much, Mr. Chairman, to be perfectly honest. I think, as an example, most of the objectives that were set last year, I hit. And, I really worked very hard to hit those objectives. But, I mean, just one example, it takes staff a long time. I don't do things by myself. I mean, I cannot do all this work by myself. I think that has to be clear. I thought that was clear last year. That it wasn't just goals and objectives for the administrator, it was goals and objectives for the organization. But we looked at three different properties. We had Alva House, I think West Harwich School, and the Bank Street Harbor Master, and now there's 6 in that area. So one of the 41 areas has 6 subcomponents to it. I mean, I was hard pressed to get to the 3. And I don't want to, I think if we could look at it, Mr. Chairman, over maybe a longer cycle than a year. I mean, it's too much to get accomplished in a year. But I just think it's things like that. Another one that I was kind of shocked by was that we're going to be responsible for the redevelopment of the Kennedy Center, the private property owned, the privately owned property across from Sackatucky Development. I mean, certainly back office, the old back office building. I mean, certainly, I agree 100% with being user-friendly and making sure that we work with the private sector to accomplish things that can be accomplished. But if that private sector owner decides not to redevelop that or decides to develop that in a certain way, I don't know what influence we can have on it. So there's certain areas like that. And like I said, I just took one read on it this afternoon. So I agree that there's a lot of good stuff in there. But I think that I would like to get a better sense for what items are going to be kind of targeted by the finance director, which ones are kind of going to be looked at me. And I heard what you said, that if these 41 goals and objectives get divvied up to 5 people, I need to go back and reprioritize some of their performance evaluations, because some of these things are not things that I have on there. A good example about the audit, and I don't want to go on and on, but we're in the process that the recommendation that I'm prepared to make, and I think the finance director is prepared to make, is we need to change auditors. We do not have a good auditor. The auditor needs to go. And, so if we go back, and maybe, we haven't had this discussion, that's why I think it needs to be a level of communication, that do we go back and look at 3 years worth of stuff that's not very well done. So those are some of the concerns, just a quick look that I have. But I just, I'd almost like to meet with department heads too and kind of share these goals with them and see what they think that we're able to accomplish. Again, as an organization, there's 22 department heads, and not all of them will be applicable, quite honestly, to some of the tasks.
Okay, thank you for that, Chris. Things you mentioned in number 44, and you counted up all the actions and deliverables with the 16 goals and objectives. So, for instance, finalize negotiations with Chatham Board of Selectmen regarding terms and conditions. And this is the stuff I want you to look at. And as Charlene sat over and shook her head up and down that there's too many, that's a Board of Selectmen goal. You're involved in that, but we're doing it anyway. Convene preliminary discussions with neighboring towns. We're doing it anyway. Go to finance. Provide 7-year capital plan. You do it anyway. Report estimated free cash. That's a quick directive to Andy. We're doing it anyway. So how many of these can you tick off quick without making this 7-page document that's no different from the town of Chatham, which is no different from Southbridge, which is, and regardless of what you have Southbridge, that was 16 and 22 plus the goals, plus the deliverables. We're not that far off. And again, if you go through this document without a quick read, take out the things that you're doing anyway, to me it's a roadmap to our constituents to show them, as far as the auditor report goes, we're audited every year. what the Board of Selectmen should at least show the constituents what the audit report says the recommendations for change are, what we're going to change and what we're not going to change, despite it. So again, I went through this. I got 125 hours into this, and I've got all the recommendations from all of the board members. This is an accurate reflection of what the board wants in its entirety. Fine going through and prioritizing, but I would ask everybody to read it and minimize the things that you're going to do anyway before we say that there's too much. So, Peter, with that, Chris, your recommendation, we certainly can't vote on this tonight. I would ask every board member to go through that document and to send me their changes. I won't support a document that is 9 basic things that I can't grade my town administrator on. I don't think I'm doing him a service, and I don't think I'm doing the town a service by not giving some of these a fair shot. So, and I would appreciate it if you would all do it before 3 days before the next meeting. Because we really need to get to the point where we vote on something. So we're not looking at October, still trying to determine goals and objectives.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Just two questions. One is a review of the selectmen's policies. I don't recall that being in this statement.
I think it is.
I'm not sure. I mean, I've read this rather quickly. But if it's not, we should add it as on, because that's something that we need to do.
Read through it, send me whatever your thoughts are.
And I think we have to be also take a look at in our own head, doing some triaging and sure which is the most important of these tools, in case we think that maybe this number is too much, maybe we drop the bottom 2 or 3 items off, because the first 5 items we have on here are all things that are in either the charter or the state regulations. So I mean, that's going to be done one way or the other. And then when we get down to other things, maybe the 1 or 2 that you wait for next year. I don't think we'll do everything we want to know. It'd be lovely if we could. I'm not arguing we should do it, but I don't know how that's going to happen.
Any other comments?
Actually, I would like to bring up one thing, and I don't know if that it's necessarily goal and objective, but it's something that is on the forefront of my brain, and it's to do with economic development. So that's a 4-item goal. And I'm a little confused about economic development in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce. I was the liaison to the Chamber last year, and I was told I cannot attend Chamber meetings because I'm not a board member of the Chamber. So I don't really know what the intent of a liaison to the Chamber is if the liaison can't participate or go to meetings. So I would like an answer to that. Maybe town administrator or Peter or somebody who knows who's been here longer.
Well,
but also how
I have
can
to be
we...
a chamber member, so I don't know if that makes a difference or not.
I have to be a chamber member.
No, I said I am a chamber member, so I don't know if that makes a difference or not. As far as access.
It's an interesting question. That would be a question we should ask Jim.
I meet with Jeremy once a month. We just have a communication. I don't go to their board meetings, but I'm aware of what their activities are, and we inform him what our activities are.
I guess my question is, what's the role of the liaison from the board if we're not allowed to attend any of their meetings?
In my opinion, it's when they have issues or things that they think are important that need the board's attention, that they have a place to go to.
Yes.
Okay.
Resource.
I guess I agree that I have a question on that, because I mean, if we're liaisons to the various boards and we're invited to attend and not speak and understand and whatever, or we don't have to go to every meeting, but we should at least be able to go to a meeting, how do we get feedback And how do we get any kind of information to even bring back to people? To just wait till they contact you?
I think everybody works a little differently. My approach to liaison, quite frankly, I typically go to the first meeting they have. I say, I'm your liaison, here's how you contact me. If you need me, get a hold of me. I'll show up at sporadic meetings, when something like piques my interest. But the chairman needs to know that if they need something, like, I don't know, let's make this up, that the Water Information Committee is thinking about having some kind of a plan to, promote town meeting, they certainly need you to bring that back to us and say, this is what we're doing, this is how we think we're gonna go about doing it, is it okay, sort of thing. The Water Information Committee last year was very interested in getting this committee handbook done, which finally got done just before the election, I think it was a week or two before that. But now they have that, so, I would sit with them, probably even say, hey, the board, so we adopt, somebody, good parties, Roland and Jackie, has an interest in trying to improve, I'll just say that, how people get information about what's going to go on at town meeting and improve participation. Got any ideas? And work it back and forth.
But back to the idea of the economic development,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at is, if our liaison is not an active participant or even reporter to the chamber and from the chamber, because we're not allowed to participate, it's my thought that we need to have an economic development committee, or, more than, we need to, more than the chamber.
We're getting outside of the scope of what we're supposed to do, so add that to your,
I think you need to define what you mean by economic development.
add that to the,
Committee, yes.
I think you're gonna find what it's actually. All right, any other board comments? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Anyone stay here?
We are adjourned.